In 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, go.
The following is a world-class Bullshitters exclusive.
We're live, folks. Submit to the High Council here on World Class Bullshitters. I'm your host, Jeff Hicks, and with me tonight are two very special, wonderful guests. First off, you know him, you love him, he's a big friend of the channel. Say hello to Script Doctor.
Hey, everybody. So happy to be here this evening.
And finally, we're also joined by a wonderful guest who has an amazing channel, who's been tearing it up here on YouTube, across the internet. Say hello to the one, the only WDW Pro.
Happy to be back. Very excited about the show. It's an exciting one for the fans out there as well as we dive into everything going down at Disney.
Well, down is the perfect word to use because I have been around for many years and I don't remember Disney ever being this embarrassing. So as somebody who has watched some of my favorite properties get purchased by Disney and get ruined by Disney, there's a little bit of schadenfreude. I'm not going to lie here. But from an intellectual perspective, from a business perspective, I find it very fascinating, all the elements that brought Disney to this point. So, folks, we're going to talk about that and a whole lot more. But before we get started, hail to everyone in the chat. And, folks, make sure you check out today's video on the decline of the superhero craze. In our eyes, it's pretty much over. So check that video out and join us tomorrow for one of our wonderful toy videos. So, Pro, Script Doctor, this has been a pretty much toxic box office weekend. The Flash underperformed, Elemental is essentially non-existent, and that other movie, The Blackening, was a bigger flop than they even expected it to be. So, there are a multitude of reasons why entertainment is where it is, but we were talking briefly off air about this. How bad does it have to be for a Disney movie from Pixar, an animated Pixar film that, you know, who's had box office hits with billions of dollars and the grosses? What does it take for it to be this bad for them? Like, where do you think, how do you think we got here?
Well, it's actually worse than what the media is letting on. So let's talk about that first before we dive into how we made it here. Let's assess correctly just how bad this is. Consider for a moment that The Good Dinosaur was previously the worst box office performer for Pixar. However, when you adjust for movie ticket prices, the average movie ticket prices, not just simply adjusting for inflation, but rather adjusting for what the actual movie ticket prices were, which we know, by the way, because there's the NATO, it's the theater organization. They keep track of the movie ticket prices, or at least they did until the pandemic. And we basically know that movie ticket prices have doubled. Now, they've doubled from The Good Dinosaur until today in 2023. And yet The Good Dinosaur is outperforming Elemental. And so what that means is that you're looking at perhaps a quarter to a third of the audience that went to go see The Good Dinosaur, Pixar's previous worst, is turning out to see Elemental. This is catastrophically bad. The other thing that really puts this into perspective is that usually when a film comes out and underperforms, what that does is it allows the competition to overperform. One of the greatest examples of this was when Frozen 2 came out. It did quite well, but the anticipation was that it would follow the normal curve and it would come in somewhere around the original film, maybe even lower. But then Rise of Skywalker / Palpatine came out, and it underperformed to such a degree that families were hungry to go see a movie in theaters for the holidays, and they chose to go see Frozen 2, and therefore Frozen 2 had this very interesting trajectory where it had its traditional bounce, but then it got a double bounce because once that competition, which comically enough came out of Disney as well, but once that competition was eliminated by the poor word of mouth, it got its second lift. Now, what we're seeing with this is truly horrible for the Walt Disney Company, because with Elemental, it's going up against another film, which is absolutely in the gutter. The Flash is doing nothing. The Flash is flittering out as fast as it can. And yet, even in spite of that, Elemental is performing to such a degree that you would have to say that families are actively choosing not to go see a Pixar film.
when you put it like that, the situation is much more dire than anyone would realize. And I, as I said off air, there's a little bit of Schadenfreude, but I'm so fascinated by all of this stuff because for years these companies would act without any sort of concern for, oh, we can have $200 million budgets, we can have $100 million in advertising costs, we can do all these wonderful things to spend all this money, and it doesn't matter. We have other ways to make money. We have other ways to supplement the losses, and that's not the case anymore. And I forget to take into account just how many people don't show up to these movies because of the box office prices changing, or excuse me, the ticket prices changing. I pay for a Regal pass. I don't think about those things, but those are all factors that I don't think enough people discuss.
That's the other part too. That's one thing that I know, because when I live up here in Canada, we pay very high ticket prices. Like it's average between $15 and $18 for a theatrical ticket for one person at like an AMC or a Cineplex or something of that nature. In fact, I just went to the movies earlier this afternoon, and it was a matinee, and the discount price was $12 each. And I'm like, that's pretty high for a matinee on a Tuesday. We didn't have the $2 Tuesdays back in the den, or the discount Tuesdays where we were. And that's just one of the things for people to consider, is that it is still, by comparison of other things to go out and do, it is still relatively cheap by comparison. But even then, that's still a little pricey. And some people, especially after 3 years of lockdown, would rather just be outside, maybe at a barbecue, at a public pool or a beach or a park, than sitting in an air-conditioned movie theater, not having as much fun as they could in the sun.
And yet the problem for Disney is that would be the narrative they would like to choose. They would like to also say, and you've seen publications begin to carry this, the idea that, well, families no longer want to go see something that's original. The original IPs are dead. It has to be a sequel, or else, well, nobody's interested. And that's just a bunch of bumpkus. I mean, there's no way that's true. We've seen that time and time again, that actually, as long as you create something that is extraordinarily high quality, then people want to see the content. They're willing to turn it into an event to bring the kids. But they've resorted to this narrative simply because the narrative of the pandemic is over. So for so long, they rode this idea that, oh, the pandemic is scaring people, families are not ready to come back, etc. And what we saw was that, well, when Top Gun Maverick came out, no, people did want to go see that. And then, of course, Sonic the Hedgehog 2 was the same. And, of course, you had Avatar: The Way of Water, which proved otherwise. And you had the Mario Brothers movie. And we've had enough times now where it's embarrassingly obvious that families do want to go back and see the movies if it's a great movie. Mm-hmm. And so now we're moving to this idea that, oh, well, it's just original IP. And that's really a defense for Disney, because other studios have yet to put out something significant that's original just quite yet. However, that's not going to be the case on and on and on. And so Disney had better get ready. The other issue they have is that they can run this excuse, although I think it will peter out very quickly, but they can run this excuse out until next summer if they can survive that long on this strategy. But next summer, they're releasing Inside Out 2. And if that bombs, every narrative they have is therefore destructed. I also think, so we've got Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny coming out. And I had a video this morning on this topic of, I think that Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is actually takes what fans hate the most about what Disney has been doing, and it pushes it as far as it can go. It's sort of the archetypal story, right? You literally are going to take the character of Phoebe Waller-Bridge playing Helena, however you want to say it. She is going to treat Indiana Jones poorly. I'm trying not to spoil the movie for anybody out there, but she's going to treat Indiana Jones very poorly. And in doing so, in a very, in the most awful way, poetic way, in that poetic way that she's going to do that in the film, I think that it's the perfect metaphor for how we all feel about these flawless female characters that Disney has put forth, like Rey, like this Helena character, like She-Hulk, like Captain Marvel, etc. We can keep going. That this character is going to actually bring harm to one of the most iconic action heroes of all time and put him in his place. And I think that is the perfect metaphor for how Disney sees the world. And it's also going to create a massive backlash even beyond what we've seen so far for Disney. Now that's a property that is clearly not original IP. It has been around since the early 80s. And so if that fails, and if it fails by hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of what it costs versus what it makes, then perhaps we don't even have to go until Inside Out 2 to get that narrative solution.
And that's one of Disney's biggest flaws, even from its inception almost, is that how many IPs can you attribute is completely created originally by Disney in its entirety? It's probably a handful in comparison. Most of the stuff they do are purchased from books, other studios, especially more recently. They don't really have a whole lot of originality in their archive, and it's basically just not part of their DNA. Essentially, Disney got its popularity for basically adapting IP, and in the last 30 years, they have lost the ability to understand how to do that.
And Script, let me ask you this. So I was doing a video with Chris Gore, and he came across something that was remarkable. It was an epiphany for me. I had never thought of this. We were talking about how, what makes these male and female characters so enticing to us is that they have to overcome challenges. And the bigger and the more realistic the challenge, the better and the more we'll probably like the character.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were talking about how your characters need to suffer and overcome the suffering without becoming insufferable. And so there was a time when studios did very well for both male and female characters in doing that. Nowadays, you can't. Nowadays, they believe that female characters cannot go through actual suffering for whatever reason. They take on all the other male attributes, but they don't take on the need to overcome the challenges because they can't be faced with any. However, here's what this was genius from Chris Gore, and I had never ever realized it. He brought up the fact that in the original Indiana Jones, Raiders of the Lost Ark, Indiana Jones does not win in the movie.
Nope.
And I had never thought of it. It blew my mind that I had seen that film so many times and never realized Indy is the loser. The villains win. The only thing Indiana Jones does in that movie to overcome and to be the victor is that he knows to close his eyes in the face of great power. He recognizes that which is beyond the mortal coil, that which is beyond human reasoning, and he recognizes to grant that power the dignity that is due, close his eyes, shield his eyes, and convince Marion to do the same. But in every other way, he loses in the movie, and we love the character all the more for it.
Well, it's called the underdog treatment, and this is something I actually was speaking with a client earlier today about, is that we as a society, as a species, appreciate and value the underdog, not because we patronize them, but because we see them try to overcome the obstacles that they have. As I was mentioning earlier to my client, Hugh Grant, as an actor, never played an underdog in the peak points of his career, but more recently he's played an underdog or a pathetic character, and he's been far more charming and affable to audiences as a result. Up until that point, around the turn of the century, people were like, oh, he's the snobby British, sex appeal guy, never has a problem type of thing, kind of villainous in some cases or antagonistic and what others. And anytime he's been in the hero role, he never really resonated at the box office. But as soon as he started doing smaller movies where he's an underdog, the returns on that have always been greater, with the expense and the criticisms aside have also been far more generous for him, because audiences liked the fact that we're seeing an underdog, an actor who has built his career never being an underdog finally does. And it's like, oh, we want to go watch him more now. And that's true with the choices he makes, but that's true with the stories that we have. Luke Skywalker is an underdog. He is a farm boy. His guardians, his aunt and uncle, discourage him constantly from leaving home, from trying to do something else. He is pushed down by the world around him. It's only when he reconnects with Obi-Wan Kenobi, who's like, no, you can come off the planet. We can go do some stuff. I think you've got what it takes to do that. And if you don't, I'm going to make sure I teach you that you have what it takes. And it comes down to a crescendo at the very end when Luke is ready to shoot the torpedoes with the targeting of Peter, and Obi-Wan comes from the voice. He's like, no, use the Force, trust in yourself. And then he says, trust in me, trust in Obi-Wan to know that he did a good enough job with you, Luke, that you can make this happen. And that is like the thematic message of the story. And it's a great archetype and a great arc with regards to the underdog becoming the hero. And it's not just about the superficial struggle. It's just about where they are and how much they have to overcome before they go from, the whiny, insufferable underdog to the confident and affable hero. Same thing goes with Tony Stark. He was arrogant, charming, but kind of a jerk, and then he gets humbled by his abuse of his own weapons used against him by an enemy, and he realizes the consequences of his actions, and now he's on that journey to build up better. He still has a little bit of the arrogance, but he still retains the charm. And it's interesting the way they were able to frame it, because they actually took a guy who was at the top and they brought him down to a cave, literally, to make him an underdog, fighting against an enemy that can't be bought by normal means. They want what he can't really sell easily, which is his mind and his inventions. And that's the basic structure of how you get really good storytelling and how you get characters to connect with the audience.
One of the genius things about what you're discussing is that probably what sets the original trilogy for Star Wars apart is that you have that journey that Luke Skywalker makes in the first film. And then, however it happened, whoever wrote this, we could go on for a long time discussing, was it George Lucas, was it someone else who came up with this idea? But the concept that then you reset everything by increasing the scope, and Luke becomes the underdog again. Mm-hmm. And what he has to realize is that once you escape the innocence of the farm boy setting and you get that first victory, then you have to contend with what you can become, that you are corruptible, and the allegory used for that is that your father already was. And it resets everything, and it sets you forth onto a trilogy. That's exactly right, Script. And it's a roadmap for how writers should take on this idea of reiterating on these franchises in such a way that you continuously must have your hero be the underdog, but you must do it in a legitimate way. And it doesn't matter if it's a male character. It doesn't matter if it's a female character. If they can easily overcome the obstacle or the challenge, why are we watching it in the first place?
Exactly. And this goes back to the Greek story of Hercules and the 10 labors. Hercules had the strength, but if he wanted to retain it and get full power, he had to achieve those 10 labors. And they were not easy things. And the other part too, in those 10 labors, he learned not just to rely on his strength, but on his wits as well. And that's where real power comes from. It's not what's physically imposing to you. It's how clever you are to use what you have when, push comes to shove. And when you have, and we can even go back, interestingly enough, to the 60s comedy film Casino Royale, where you have actually several examples of strong female characters who use their femininity and some of their own combat skills against an adversary, but not in a way where it is superficially, I'm beating the crap out of you. It's more like, I have enough strength to use my body weight to get you off balance, and then I can run away or swing or grab a weapon or something to knock you down to level the playing field of sorts. That was what was really kind of fun with that. And those types of things were kind of being peppered throughout culture and film whenever they could be. But at the same time, they were also creating in the background a snowball effect where people were seeing this and saying, well, if we do all of these things that happened in 10 years that these strong female characters did, but we packed it into one and we put it into one single film, that'll be even better, completely forgetting the fact that you're losing everything else around those set pieces that made those set pieces interesting, which is the fact that they were not perfect characters to begin with.
And that's the perpetual appeal of Spider-Man for me, is him being the underdog forever. When he gets the girl, when he gets the money, when he gets the fame and notoriety as Peter Parker, then it's not as interesting. And that's why they always reset and reboot and try to take him down a peg. But when it's prime and well written and it's done the right way, there's no greater hero. And that's why that character makes $1 billion when other characters aren't, or $2 billion, on a single character. And is my mic coming in better now?
Yes, it is.
All right,
great.
Okay, because I saw the audience tell me that it. So, folks, I'm always paying attention to you guys in the chat. Thank you. But I prefer an underdog because we can see ourselves in them. And I know when I'm approaching stuff, nobody wants to read about the Mary Sue character. They're laughable at best. I mean, there's a reason why we've been lampooning this stuff for years. But every major thing seems to be just characters based on a power fantasy of people that don't understand how to create. They don't understand how the video game writing works. They don't understand how the comic writing or the movie writing. They just create a bunch of characters that look a certain way but don't really deliver. And I don't like any excuse Hollywood wants to give. But I do think this is the result of just a lot of that and more. I mean, does anyone out there in the chat relate to these modern characters, like the ones that they change and try to adapt and update? No, Script, you brought up Tony Stark and how when he's brought down, or even use Thor, because I like the first Thor movie, when he
Oh
loses
yeah.
his power and he's brought back to Earth and he's zapped of everything and he has to learn what it means to be a human. I think that's a great message. Maybe it's not the greatest MCU movie, but to see a god become a man and have to work his way back to become worthy, I find that fascinating. If he was just all powerful the whole time, it would be boring. Look at the later Thor movies.
Yeah, I mean that's even one of the things that they managed to kind of achieve a little bit to a degree with Thor Ragnarok is that they took him to this other planet. They kind of beat him down a little bit, and he kind of has to kind of work his way up and figure out a way to get off of it. And they did it in a more fun way, but it also kind of stemmed a little bit differently in tone compared to what we were expecting for Thor. And then of course they just went the exact opposite direction for Love and Thunder. They just leaned into the comedy. But one of the things I always appreciated about Thor, especially in some of the comics that I've read, particularly in the 80s and early 90s, is that there's a comedic element to him in the fact that he is so dedicated and serious with the responsibilities that he has that you can kind of have a little chuckle at it, but you're not feeling like it's being mocked. You're laughing because the commitment is great and grand, and the way he speaks is slightly off, but it just feels authentic. And I think that's kind of what was captured with the first Thor film, definitely, and to a degree with Thor Ragnarok, and also in a couple of aspects of the Avengers and his other appearances. But again, it's been wavering because instead of committing to the fact that Thor learned his lesson and understands the responsibilities he has, and he's trying to keep it serious, but at the same time make it fun because a part of his personality is to have fun being a hero. It not just because again, before it was being a warrior like his father, but then he understands what it means to be a hero. And I liked that arc, and I liked the fact that they were kind of going in that direction, and then they completely just tossed it out of the window for low hanging fruit, bad jokes.
Disney has also sort of sacrificed the maternal spirit because they have refused to allow their female characters to be flawed in any way. They won't allow them to overcome things because they won't allow them to be anything less than perfect. And as a result, we don't get strong stories about women, not only in this role where they are trying to play a masculine trope, but as well, we don't get strong maternal figures. And that's really missing. And I was trying to think in modernity, what have we had that has been a reflection of proper maternal instinct and spirit? And I can only come up with two things. In Script, perhaps you can come up with some additionals. But I think to Guardians of the Galaxy and the relationship between Gamora and Nebula, that seems to be the proper maternal spirit. It's a sisterly situation there, so it's not exactly maternal, but at least you have the two women wanting to look out for one another, and it's a genuine kind of relationship. And then perhaps more appropriately, I was thinking about Arcane off of Netflix, the League of Legends show, where Vi and Jinx have what is essentially a maternal relationship because the mother is gone, and you have Vi trying to take care of Jinx, and both of those characters are severely situated into underdog territory by their circumstances, and so I think that was extraordinarily well received. As a result, I think that is an indicator for Hollywood about where to go with women. It's okay for women to face obstacles that they're not sure they can overcome, and especially when that involves relationships, and especially beyond that when it involves relationships of a maternal nature, which only women can experience and puts them in a unique position.
Yeah, I would say in that regard, it's few and far between. It's also few and far between on the opposite side of things with regards to good, positive father figures. In fact, this afternoon I saw Burt Kreischer's The Machine with him and Mark Hamill, and it's actually got a really touching father-son message, father-daughter message. And it's also got a female character that does display some of the attributes of the strong female character, but is so heavily flawed, so heavily disturbed, and it's played for comedy. And it's actually done quite well. Now, I don't strongly recommend this film, but if you're looking for a couple of really good laughs and a little mockery of wokeisms and a straightforward quest story between father and son, kind of like Last Crusade, but it's nowhere near as good as Last Crusade, I would recommend checking out The Machine because it does a decent job. and it's driven by the fact that the main character Bert loves his daughter, has issues with his dad but loves him, and is trying to be the best dad he can given given his circumstances and situation. And it's like that is a really, rare message, or theme, that would be a better word for it, rare theme to see in a film, especially in this period.
It seems like a lot of the problem just stems from, like, I don't know if this is intentional, but like families and stories in general. I mean, how many modern Netflix shows or how many stories are about why your family sucks and why you don't need your family and your friends are better than your family? Like, that's a trope and a trend I've seen in a lot of stuff for quite a while. I mean, if you go back to like 80s entertainment, it's more family oriented, but then you get to the 90s with Friends, everything's about you don't need your family. They're crazy, they're annoying. It kind of gets perpetuated online. It's almost like just across the board, the people that create this stuff don't have that kind of I don't know, I don't call it a good background, because I mean, who am I to judge anybody's background? But have you guys noticed that just across the board, it's like family stories are so different or not really elevated? They don't even teach some of the stuff I've seen. They're kind of like, screw them. You don't need to be tolerant of your older parents or your older grandparents or stuff. It just seems like the value of today, and this is across the board with some of these what they call strong female characters, is a shitty personality is enough to become strong and independent and this and that, and just characters are almost valueless. I'm not saying I need the Waltons, but I would like to watch something where I like Home Improvement. To me was a good example. They may be stupid, they may be fake, they may be two-dimensional at times, but they all cared about each other, and you believe that the characters would be there every time Tim glued his head to the door. Like, it wasn't they're like, oh dad, you suck, goodbye.
No, I think the one of the aspects is that in that type of writing, they're conflating the pushing against authority with just being a jerk, and that's wrong. The other part too, you also have to acknowledge, for those that might not know, the concept of the nuclear family is only a little over a century old. Before then, the nuclear family is really just mom, dad, 2.4 kids type of thing. That was kind of the structure. Prior to that, everyone every families were mostly like based around like a farm where you basically hired employees and then you birthed employees and you had to get as many as you could in order to survive. That was kind of it. And then it kind of shrunk down a little bit more as we got closer to the 20th century. But the other part too is that the attitude, because there's the old saying, you can pick your friends, but you can't pick your family. But there's also another part to that, which is that's only for when you're a child. But as you grow up, you realize you can create your own family. And there's a lot of power to that, because it starts with you picking your friends. And it's basically a cycle, which is that, yes, the children don't get to pick the family they're in, but they get to use that family as a basis for what they want for themselves. And that's the arc that keeps on getting muddied with basically derivative writers and people that want to pay for that type of stuff to promote. They're losing the core concept of what it is, because families come in all shapes and forms. The one thing that's the through line of the family is that they all care and love each other and will do everything to protect and also prepare them for the world ahead. And there is a default framework biologically, and then there's a couple of other types of frameworks that, when done responsibly, and and responsibly, we all know what that means. You don't have to go into details. But done responsibly is as valued as the biological default, because it's all about wanting the same thing, which is just someone to be with, to love, to share, and to pass on our own values, or the values of that we find value, our values, sorry, I'm just cycling there, values to the next generation, and let them be able to create whatever family they feel would best serve them and best embody the values that they learned.
So let me put on my deep hat here. let me try to see how far I can wade down into this and make sense with it. But the way I see this is that sometimes writers want to present the relationships that characters who are, by the way, a representation of our own selves. We go to the theaters to watch ourselves, ideally in the best forms, but sometimes in the worst of forms to overcome challenges. We role play through those characters. That's the fun of it, right? That's what we've been doing ever since we gathered around the campfire to listen to the shaman speak to us about what had happened, or the hunter tell us about the big hunt and how things went well or wrong. I think in modern times, sometimes we believe that relationships, when they no longer work for us to some degree that perhaps is not sufficient, that the relationships then are able to be broken off, and that we then go on to find people who can edify us in whatever way we feel is necessary. But there are some problems with that, and there's also some good to it, right? And so it's a situation where it's difficult to know where that line stops and where it starts, etc. For example, if you teach people in Hollywood, and if you teach people in movies that that the minute that they're disconcerted by the relationships in their life, that those relationships are discardable. Well, the problem there is that what if your family is telling you something that is right and you believe it is wrong, but they're actually right and their wisdom is actually being ignored by you? Well, in that case, you discard them at your own risk. And so there's this issue of, what do you do with relationships which are not good? And we all know that there are relationships that go to an abusive level. However, I think that the importance of the family to some degree, and not all of it for by any means, but to some degree, the utility of the family goes to this level. Your family will always be there, or at least that's the
Should be.
idea,
Yeah.
should be. And you have to manage those relationships. And this goes right down to the marriage idea. You say that you'll be with somebody for better or worse, and you mean it. And some people don't mean that, and they're willing to hop out when it gets difficult. But if you really, really mean it, and if the other person really, really means it, then you have to go through some really hard stuff, and they have to know all the trash about you, and you have to know all the trash about them. And then you still have to believe at the end of the day that they are worth being with, and that they believe that you're worth being with. And then that provides you with the stability to go out into the world beyond what you could be without that individual. And in the best of worlds, that's also what happens in a family. And that, I think that's always been true, is that you come into this world and you need someone to sustain you completely. You are going to have dirty diapers. You soil yourself. You cannot feed yourself. You cannot move nothing. All you can do is cry out. And despite that, someone believed in you. And the family situation is tricky because families are tricky, because people are tricky. But the issue I have with Hollywood is that when you portray the family as discardable, when you can just bounce from one relationship into a different family relationship, a family of your own design, the problem is that it's all glitz and glamour and the grass is greener. But you will find out that people of all types are still imperfect. And even if you construct your own familial relationships, which sometimes is necessary and sometimes is inevitable, but you're going to find out that people are messy. All people are messy. You're messy. I'm messy, because we're people and we're all flawed. And I find some of the best stories in entertainment to be those where somehow, some way, in a way that's authentic, people are able to struggle against the difficult relationships and overcome. I'll give you two examples, and then I'll see what you guys think about this. I'm interested in your opinions. Two examples. First one, Guardians of the Galaxy. Let's go back to it, because I'm amazed that it's managed to break even in spite of all the rest of Disney and Marvel. It's really an outlier at this time, majorly. So what's driving that? Well, I think in part, people highly identified with the relationship between Peter Quill and Yondu. That's a paternal relationship where it's messy, where that's one that Star-Lord could easily go to a different family and say, I have nothing to do with this man. And yet there is something there, even between him and the adoptive father, because we yearn to heal relationships. That's what I've been trying to get at, and I couldn't figure out how to articulate it well. We yearn to heal relationships whenever possible. I believe that. And then the other one, and this points to the same thing, where you're trying to figure out, what is family, and what do I do with a family that's broken? What do I do with it? Well, Star Wars connects with people at a very deep level, because that's the question at the core of it. What does Luke do with his own father being the worst? The very worst. Well, he goes back all the way to the Ten Commandments idea of honor your father and mother. He believes that there is something worth saving in his father, because he knows that his father constitutes who he is to some degree. And if he is savable, then so is his father. And he goes into the belly of the whale to save him. He goes right back into the ancient mythologies to go and to find a way to redeem the sins of the past that his father has committed. And that is yet another example that I think people yearn for, especially people who are in broken relationships at the moment. They yearn to find a way to have some kind of connection, even with the people who have harmed them, even when perhaps they should not. And that's the thing with people. We are all so complex and so messy. And I know that there are lots of people out there who are heartbroken and who've had heartbreaking relationships. And that's what we play out on entertainment. That's what we play out on the big screens in front of ourselves, is playing out this very challenging thing that is family, that is friendship, that are the social relationships that we have.
I think that's a very insightful aspect, and to go back to your point with regards to the honor your mother and father, that is something that's kind of a reluctant issue with regards to a child. Like when a child is born, they have no choice but to trust their parents because there's no other way they would ever survive. Like it's a compelled part, but it also creates the concept of respect, which is as parents, you have to earn the respect of your child just as your child has to earn the respect of you. And that is part of a fundamental of a relationship, and it's also part of a fundamental of marriage, because essentially when you're asking someone to be your spouse, you're thinking in the short term with regards to a life together, a family, and whatnot. But there's also a part of you in the back of your mind that is saying, this is the only person I trust to do the right thing if I happen to die. They'll take care of my body, essentially my corpse or what have you, and then you would be saying vice versa for them. It's a little dark humor, but it's basically saying, of all the people in the world, you're the one who I want to see me dead. And there's a joke to that too, especially when you're in arguments with your relationship where they.
I think it goes beyond that script. I think
Yeah.
it's in the proper place, in the very best that we can be. It's not that we want. It's not that you're the one we would allow to see us dead. It's that I will be dead for you if it is so necessary. I will give everything I have for your well-being, and I hope that you'll do the same for me, so that we can create a cycle of love that is amazing. And at the same time, you can give me hell, right? If this falls apart, we both go through hell.
Mhm.
And there's no escaping that. We're getting one or the other, baby. Like, we're going for this.
Well, yeah, that's why I laugh at the joke that 50% of all marriages end in divorce. It's like, well, the other 50 is death. Like that's always gonna be that way. And the other part too is that there's a trust there. It's like if it's till death to us part, which is the tragic part, but at least it means it's a commitment all the way, right? And that's kind
Exactly.
of what you want to have. Is it's like I want to grow old with you. I want to if you pass away, I'll take care of your body. I'll take care of the arrangements. I'll take care of our family that's left. And if I go, you'll do the same. And we have that trust. We've built that trust. We've maintained that trust. But at this other same time, it's like, I mean, we want to be able to go when we go, because it's inevitable, in a very, very pleasant and a confident way, where we know when we're gone, the world will go on around us, and the people that we leave behind will persevere, regardless of the fact that we're no longer around. There's nothing better anyone can hope for, in their final moments. And I know this because this is something my dad used to tell me all the time, because he lost his father at a very young age, and I lost my father in my early 20s. And it was just something he kind of prepared me for, even though he thought he was going to live forever, and I wish he did. But he's basically saying, like, the job of the parent, the job of the spouse, is to just make sure that the love that you have for them is a nurturing love that prepares them for when that love breaks. And when it comes to stories, when you go to Luke Skywalker, he grew up with a fantasy of what his father would be because he wasn't there. And then when he learns the truth of what he really is, and the fact that his father's instinct when that truth was revealed was not to kill him, but to say, just, do what I did, fall to the dark side, join me. And Luke says no, because of that choice that Vader made. Luke actually has a morsel of belief in the fact that the fantasy of who his father was before he fell was real. And that is what drives him. And that's kind of the aspect that makes Jedi such a great movie for Luke and Vader's story. I wish they had more depth with Han and Leia in that film, but
Yes, they didn't know what to do with the B story there.
that's a whole other thing. But that's kind of like the driving force, is because we all wish we all want to have ideals with regards to our parents, that they're perfect beings because they're the ones that natured us. We are the center of our own universes, and we are hoping that we are going to be as good. And ideally, from the parents' perspective, we want our children to be better than us. And that's the theme of theirs. That's what Luke was. Luke faces the same challenges, the same obstacles, the same temptations that his father did, but because he resisted them and defied them, based on the memory and the fantasy of what he had for his father, he was able to redeem his father and do the very thing that made him say, like, essentially, like, You were right, Luke. Tell your sister you were right. And there's a subtext to that, which is basically him saying, I'm very proud of you. And that's a
Yes.
beautiful aspect with it. And that's exactly what you want. And that's why, even when it comes to like legacy characters and children and things of that nature, it's one thing to say, okay, yes, let's say Spider-Man has a kid and it's Mayday and she's 17. I know people say, well, she can't be better than Spider-Man. But the truth being is that for Spider-Man to be successful as a character and as a father, she has to eventually become there. She shouldn't be better right away. Like, she has to grow to that point. You have to have that scene, whether it's a comic book, a television show, or movie, where if he is teaching her the ropes and she does something amazing, that Spider-Man's reflex is to say, that's my girl, and do it as a cheer, because it reflects on him that why she's so good. If you were to write the story where you tear him down to lift her up, that is disingenuous, inauthentic, and it actually hurts the franchise. It hurts the character, and that's what Disney has been kind of doing and been the front runner doing with regards to this. Like, Warner Brothers was right on the cusp of that, but luckily Zaslav came in and nixed those ideas. We got a couple of temptations of it with the Birds of Prey film, which was god awful. Don't even want to bring that back. But Marvel actually committed to it. They actually kind of said that they got the Riri Williams character and Wakanda Forever, who is doing stuff Tony Stark level at her age, without any of the access or resources or anything of that nature. You've got WandaVision.
That's the Ray syndrome all over again.
You've got WandaVision just discovering runes based on seeing them in a basement for a couple of minutes and being able to replicate them and put them up there, even though there's been no established history that she has a photographic memory of any sort type. And
that's because they don't believe that you have to give an origin story to the female characters, because the female characters enter the story in a state of perfection.
And that's boring, because that's called arrested development.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I mean, it's this bad. I mean, go back to Star Wars again. They bring in Rey in the first movie that she's in. She has the vision of her parents leaving her. That is the thing she's supposed to overcome. They never come back and resolve it, ever.
And the other part, too, is she wants to stay on Jakku when really the motivation would be she has to try and get off the planet to find her parents. That's the normal, logical progression of things. If her parents left her here with a note saying, we're doing this to keep you safe, and she's managed to survive in this planet on her own, where she's like, I'm now safe, now I need to go find my folks. And that should be the motivation. And any opportunity that she could get would want to do that. Meeting Finn and saying, we got to get off this planet, she should be like, I'm there. Like, I'll help you do what you do, and in turn, you help me find a way to navigate the galaxy so I can locate what happened to my family. Like, that would be the symbiotic thing. Just like with Obi-Wan and Luke, when they go to Han and be like, we need to go to Alderaan. Han is taking the charter because he owes Jabba the Hutt money. Like, that it's a symbiotic relationship there. And then the best part too, and this goes into a little side thing, which I won't dwell on too much, which is that Han Solo is a really, really great pilot, but he's supposed to be a terrible smuggler. And we learn that when after Luke and Obi-Wan leave and Greedo comes up to him with a gun and says, you just lost a cargo shipment. That's why you owe money. You're not good at your job. And now we as the audience are thinking, oh man, if he's not good at his job, is he going to be able to actually like get Luke and Obi-Wan to where they need to be? And that's the thing that's lingering in the back of your mind. And guess what happens? They all get captured by the Death Star. And now, and it's not him smuggling that saves him. It's his own wits, his own determination, combined with Luke giving him encouragement as well and saying, yeah, we can pull this off to get out of there.
And that's an affirmation it's the affirmation of the need for the true believer and the skeptic to unite in one. I mean, that's what the story is going there too. Luke really believes in this thing, in this mystic power. You know, he actually believes in the fairy tale, and Han does not. And yet you need both of those in congruency and able to have the adventure. So it's a wonderful thing. George Lucas understood it.
And it pulls Han Solo in the direction where he realizes, like, he was just about to leave and pay off his debt and go live with the money. And he realizes that's not where my skill set is. I just pulled off something amazing. I rescued the princess from the dragon's castle. And that's why
Terry, not a tiger. I just got to say, script. Yeah. That is the quote of the night. I love that quote. Rey was born with an unlocked skill tree. That is perfect.
Yep. And
it was so frustrating.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, and that's why Han comes back at the end, it's not a Deus Ex Machina. It's basically a byproduct of the lessons that Han was learning when his hero's journey started an hour into the film.
Yes.
And it's my favorite part of that movie.
Yeah.
Every time I go, yes, when he shows up at the end. Yes, it happens every time, but I'm a kid at heart when I watch Star Wars. But that was always, it's so frustrating across the board how people on social media want to ignore all of these elements that go into a story. And when people call out these modern stories for lacking these things that, we'll just call it lacking quality, just as a cover-all phrase, you get into the just the name calling and all of this stuff, and it just tears down entertainment left and right. I mean, like we were talking off air script, entertainment, art dictates culture, and this lack of determination dictates some of the issues of today's world, where people don't watch their heroes get up and try again. Like I mentioned Spider-Man, like they even say in the first movie, people love to watch a hero fail, fall, die trying. Then they love to see him win. Nobody even, for a generation of people, they looked at Luke Skywalker, he loses, then he finally wins in the third movie. People just are conditioned to expect all of this, and it hurts. I understand that movies don't need to be influential to everybody, and everyone should have their own values and beliefs and things that they learn on their own. But how many of us here in the chat, all a couple hundred of us watching, we're all influenced by this stuff. And that's why we're passionate about the decline of this, and fascinated by the decline of it, and frustrated by the decline of it. Because yes, it makes for great YouTube, but at the end of the day, the lack of quality storytelling across the board just makes, I don't know, having fun with your friends talking about entertainment or discussing bigger societal issues, they just kind of go out the window. It's just produced crap these days. I miss watching characters that, you can, like they always say, the best stories come from life experience. And I firmly believe none of these people that have the power to create have the life experience. It's just all one big incestuous circle of people creating for other creators to get a joke over on them or do things like them, or they have these discussions and they don't worry about the greater, broader appeal. And that's why things like all these movies today really, basically these people are putting themselves out of a job because they keep creating for a smaller and smaller group of people. And it's just about time for these things to eventually disappear. I know we're looking at movies like The Flash and Elemental and things like Star Wars that aren't going to bring in all this money for these companies because, yes, they're tiresome. Yes, they're tiring to watch. But at the end of the day, they lack those greater, deeper issues. Why are we talking about the same movies for 50 years nearly? Because they resonate with us on deeper levels. Spiritual, metaphysical, all these things with Star Wars. Everybody can relate to Indiana Jones and his dad. Even if you don't have a dad in the picture and you have a different parent in the picture, you can understand what that's like. And you brought up Guardians with the father-son relationship between Yondu and Quill. That's the best part of the movie. I love that
relationship. Yes, I love that relationship. My favorite
line of Guardians is he may have been your father, but he ain't your daddy. The way, or whatever, I paraphrased that wrong, but that's the best part of that movie. And when Yondu dies and they do the fireworks and the shit with the other pirates, like that is where that movie becomes great. It was a good movie and I had a lot of fun, but I think many people look at the first Guardians as, oh, it's this great story, it's got Baby Groot, it's funny, it's unique. It is, it's all there. But Guardians 2 brought a level at the end that was awesome to me, and that's what made it an actual movie that to me has value. Not just, I had a good time, I laughed, there were a million jokes. No, that scene right there. And I want a lot more of that in my entertainment, because it'll sit with me, I'll think about it, I'll want to go back and return to it, and I'll want to consume it again in another way too, like buying the figures or wearing the t-shirt. Guardians 2 has more depth than I thought it ever would. And I like that. I don't like the stupid, superficial elements of these movies. I want to have something that I think about.
Yeah, and the other part, and then that's the value of story, because that's what story started out with. It was basically, how do I teach the people that are in my tribe essentially to survive the next day? And we gather around the campfire. I tell you about the hunt. I warn you about the tiger that's in the bushes that that's lived outside of our village for what we think is like 20 years, and how anytime any hunter goes in that direction, they'd never come back because the tiger gets them. But you have that one kid that learns that story and realizes, well, if I train and practice and learn from the best and survive, maybe I can slay that tiger, and our tribe can actually expand out beyond the borders that the tiger patrols. And the one day they do that, and it comes back with the head of the tiger, and that's the story of victory. And that becomes legend within that tribe, and it is shared from generation to generation, and it it feeds a very human theme, which is that through hard work, perseverance, through gaining knowledge from other people's experiences, their successes and their failures, and putting that into yourself, you too can overcome the tiger in the woods, so to speak. And that's what's been kind of lost. And when it comes to modern day writing, what we end up having is we have a bunch of people who have limited life experience because they're more lean into, oddly enough, they're either the outcasts, where they just are self-isolated, they don't like to interact with other people, and they imagine and fantasize and whatnot, and sometimes those fantasies are morbid. And then there's the ones that they're the popular people who just are nudged in the direction, but everything about their life has been superficial, and it never really had any meaning, and the stuff that they thought had meaning ends up being empty and hollow. And that's what gets translated from what they know into our content, and that's why it's having such a negative turnout result with audiences, is because there's such a huge degree of separation with regards to relating to those people that it just gets boring. I cite a prolific writer who's actually pretty decent with dialogue but terrible with decisions would be David E. Kelly. Every single one of the shows he does, aside from, I guess, Boston Public, is about rich, well-to-do people, and their problems are not real problems at all. And he's the only guy who wrote a comedy with Robin Williams returning to TV that couldn't get a second season. And it's because there's no real conflict. It didn't have the underdog aspect that what made Robin Williams a star, which is the fact that he always plays underdogs to varying degrees. And he's fun with it. He knows how to lean it in there. But he does this show called The Crazy Ones with him and Sarah Michelle Gellar. And what is he? He's the president of a top-tier ad agency. And the only thing they have to worry about is securing the account. Are they worried about money? No. Are they worried about relationships? Not really. Just the account, that one central idea. Now, had the premise been Robin Williams plays an ad executive who is ousted of his account, and he has to start from the ground up because he's a perfect advertiser, and every single job he needs is important because it keeps him fed, allows him to pay his alimony or support his kid, that is a show that you can have a lot of fun with, that people actually get behind. And Dave E. Kelly just doesn't recognize that. And you know what? Dave E. Kelly's a lucky man because he's married to Michelle Pfeiffer, but he's also very disconnected from his audience. And every once in a while, he'll get a good show going. I think he's got one now that outside of the writer's strike. I'm sure once the strike is done, it'll bounce back. But every once in a while, he does manage to land something that works. But for the most part, a lot of the shows that he puts out just don't have that underdog relatability to it that would make people go for it. And that's kind of a common affliction that happens in a lot of Hollywood people. Like, I don't have a coffee order. I'm one of the few writers in the world that doesn't have a coffee order. But I can tell you all the types of stuff you want to know about personal relationships between siblings, between aunts, between uncles, between teachers, between bullies, rivals, all that type of stuff that all the writers I do know that have a very extensive coffee order couldn't stand shoulder to shoulder with on me.
To add on to what Script is saying, too, I think that the latest crop of writers have bought into, perhaps the majority of them, but perhaps it's just a significant enough that they're impacting the writer's room. They've bought into this postmodern intersectionality idea. And
so it's low-hanging fruit. It's the easy way.
In their writing, they're permeating it with the, identitarianism, tribalism, and you have to write certain characters in certain ways because they're not allowed to show weakness at all. You can predict who is going to be the bad guy simply based on the color of their skin, etc. And that makes for dull writing. It makes for a dull experience when you can predict what's going to happen based on immutable differences in the characters. The other thing I would say is that in the very best, and this is something that we have not been getting out of Disney as of late, they have stepped away from this for obvious reasons, because once you enter into postmodern intersectionality, you are entering into an arena where you are trying to battle for power, right? And there is no longer any sort of objective virtue. There is no sort of parameter by which you can figure out what is right and what is wrong, and how do you rank order the virtues and what you should do in life. It's just up to your whims and your own experiences, your truth, right? When you do that, you lose that. I think the very best stories point you to something that is transcendent and even beyond just what you could be to be the best hunter or the best gatherer or the best warrior. The reason that we get cold chills and we rise to our feet when Han Solo suddenly appears and saves Luke Skywalker is because Han has discovered the quote unquote good that he did not believe in. He has seen that there is more than himself. He's willing to die in order to save his friend. He has recognized something that calls to us to be the very best of ourselves, and it goes beyond who we are in the moment. And that is what we're all looking for in the very best of stories, I believe, is a call to rise to something that approximates going beyond where you would normally go if you were just looking at your own postmodern, self-centered ideals and instead believed in something that transcends beyond.
Well said.
Yeah.
Like you said, we all get on our feet for that stuff. And today, it's all lacking. And that's one of the reasons why these people, I mean, there's multiple reasons, but they keep going back to that same well, because there was a time when people did that and they just think, well, this movie made a bunch of money and people still like it. It's the brand, it's the brand, it's the brand. Branding can be just as damaging as much as it can be helpful. I was reading an interesting article talking about how after enough disappointments, a brand loses its luster, and it has to be about the individual products at times. Mm-hmm. And can you give me a Lucasfilm or a Disney product that has been excellent, that has stood out? Because everything else just feels like it's the same old shit. It's the same kind of strong characters, it's the same kind of lackluster stories, it's the same kind of hollow, pointless endeavors, and it's just a rinse and repeat formula across the board. I mean, if these people want to make it's not even about, I mean, originality is key here, but if you can just even if you reimagine something and find out how to add depth to something that lacked depth in a really impactful way, you can create stuff. I mean, even something as basic as The Thing, they were able to add more than that was there in the original version, the Howard Hawks version, and create something that's classic. And depth doesn't mean, familial this or that. Sometimes it's just enough to have interesting characters and a setting that is elaborated upon, and to create, how do I want to say it? To create more than that what's on the screen. To make the reader, the audience, I think you need to think. You need to feel. You need to have emotions when you watch it. I don't want to just stare at a screen and go, That's what I do have to. Look, and I'm not with my.
You don't want to turn off your brain, because if you turn off your brain too much, you die. And you don't want people dying in theaters. But
because theaters are dying,
because theaters are already doing that on their. Theaters are doing that on their own. It reminds me of like cooking. We have our favorite foods, but the thing of the matter is, like, when we go to a restaurant, we want our favorite thing, and sometimes we can get tired of it. But a smart restaurant will know that their customer base might get a little tired with the repetition, so they'll find someone. They'll have an experienced chef or an up-and-coming chef that's got a talent to just add something extra to the recipe, so that you're still buying and eating the same meal, but maybe it's got a little bit of spice that really hits your palate just right, or maybe it's got a side dish or a garnish or something else that just gives it that extra luster. It's still the same, but it's got something else, and that's how you avoid the concept of fatigue from the audience perspective. The fatigue always comes from the fact that the studio is not putting in the effort. And you can't. No business can survive if you're just relying on the reputation of the brand and not contributing to the effort of what made that brand the brand to begin with.
Well, and what script is describing is something that's easily understood in psychology. Whenever you're existing inside of a brand, then you come into that with an expectation of the sort of flavor, if we want to do the culinary comparison, or the order of things. But if you just simply stay with the order of things, then it becomes sort of authoritarian, right? So if you just stay within the brand to such a degree that you can never escape what the brand did before, then you're in an authoritarian sort of system where everything has to follow the exact specific rules as whatever came before it. And then you just get into a cyclical system of repeating. And so, but how do you escape that, right? You want to give people what they enjoy. And by the way, that actually works with preschoolers, because the whole world is new to them. So if you give them a movie and play it 5 times in a row, they love it, because it's familiarity, and because they're learning something new all the time from it, because it's so overwhelmingly new to them, that they're constantly picking stuff up. But for adults, how do you escape that? You want to give them what they clearly want, and yet you must deviate from the rules to some degree. Well, You enter into unknown territory to a degree that they can handle it, and everybody has a different proclivity for that. But you have to try to get into the area where the most people possible inside the audience enter into that zone of proximal enjoyment, because they haven't gone so far out of the order that they're accustomed to that they feel like they've exited the brand. By the way, that's what many of these franchises do when they have these arrogant writers come in and decide, I'm going to do away with the source material. I'm going to do whatever I want. But they need to have enough variation within that set of rules that it's not just that you're reordering that which happened, okay? Because then what you get from that is you get The Force Awakens, which may seem fun at first, and then you realize, oh wait, there's nothing to this. It's vapid. It's vacant of new ideas. But what you want to do is you want to enter into that unknown territory to explore it, but in such a way that the audience feels safe and knows, okay, I'm still within this world. I don't feel as if I'm exiting this world. These characters are still true to themselves. And it's the same way that you might be if you were to, let's say, go to a new city, right? If you go to a new city, you want to know that still the rules of traffic exist, or else, well, what do? Well, you're frozen in fear. You're frozen on the sidewalks, and I have no idea how this works. I have to learn all new things. And so just like exploring new territory in the real world, when you're in the world of your mind and the imagination in fiction, you want to know that the markers still exist that keep you planted in a place that's familiar, but nobody wants to explore their own room over and over and over because there's nothing left to uncover there. You need to go to new places.
Yes, and one of the things that how you differentiate between a great writer and a mediocre writer is a great writer will have no problems with all the rules and do's and don'ts you put in place for them, because it just allows them to explore the gaps that have not been addressed. And that might
they'll find it exciting.
Yeah, they'll find it exciting, and they'll find ways to do that. That's why whenever anyone says they push back on outlining a story or what have you, it's like because they say it's too constrictive. It's like, if you think it's too constrictive, then you're not using your brain creatively. Because the thing of the matter is that that's just a structure to make sure that you get to the end. How you get there and how you do it doesn't matter if you have an outline or not. Well, it doesn't matter if you have an outline. You don't want to not have an outline in some cases. But if you have the outline and you go off track, you can at least go back to the outline, like, oh, this is where I went off track. I like the direction I'm going, but if I have to, I can just make my adjustments because I see where I went differently and then get myself back onto the direction that I want to go to. You don't have to stick to the rules of your outline if you do it. Or when it comes to the rules of a franchise that you're a shepherd of, if you find a way to circumvent them without tearing down the foundation, that's where you get into exciting territory again. Like the one thing that made me kind of excited for Star Wars until I saw J.J. Abrams' name associated with it is that they were introducing a cast that looked like it had no blood relation to the previous characters. And that interested me because Star Wars is bigger than the Skywalker family. And
Script, why did you hesitate to offer your enthusiasm once you discovered that J.J. Abrams was attached? What was it all the way back then that really gave you pause?
I saw the pilot to Lost, knew he didn't have a show that could stick a landing, and knew that he was a fraud.
So you knew that the mystery box was empty.
Well, yes, because I also worked in sales as a kid, and the mystery box is basically how you move terrible inventory that doesn't sell. And I actually have one of my first videos is about mystery boxes and how it works with regards to the sales tactic side of things, because it's a pitch mechanism. And the other part too is that if you're using a mystery box as a pitch mechanism, you're not using it for story, because they don't work in tandem with each other. A story has to have a conclusion, a resolution. Kind of like how The Flash doesn't have a conclusion or a resolution. It has one glaring flaw. I mean, of many, but one very glaring flaw, which is
I was going to have to push you back on that a little bit if you said it had one flaw.
Who the heck killed Nora Allen in that movie? I mean, the whole premise is that he's trying to exonerate his father, and he's a CSI, but a default mystery is if you're trying to exonerate someone who is charged with murder or convicted for murder, the one way to do this, one, you find evidence that proves their innocence, and two, you find the real killer. And they completely forgot about the real killer aspect of it. Yeah, which basically is a betrayal of the premise that you're setting up.
It felt weird to hear the ruckus down in the kitchen, but to never see anything. I mean, it'd be like if you watch Spider-Man. How did Uncle Ben get shot? What happened to him? I don't know, but he's dead. Like, would anyone accept that? I mean, the Flash knew that it was a Hollow movie, and it knew that it was a Michael Keaton joint. And that's why Batgirl all of a sudden popped up on social media today, to hope people will talk about it, to maybe they can make money. I know they can't for the legal reasons and the tax write-off and all that stuff. But
They'd have to pay a lot of money to other parties in order to get that going. Like they'd have to pay back the government, whatever institution they got the tax credit from, what they missed, what they got back in return for that in order to use it. So, and I think those directors are trying to pull a Zack Snyder with the Snyder Cut thing. Maybe they have secret copies of the footage that Warner Brothers is unaware of, which means that they're in possession of property that is not theirs.
I think they're morons. That's what I think. I have never been.
They had a
impressed
lot
with
of
them.
potential earlier on, but they squandered it because I think much like a lot of directors of the last 5 to 8 years they've been getting plucked out of their indie sphere too early before they've actually properly ripened and ready for the tentpole big blockbusters. Colin Trevorrow was one of them. Andy Muschietti is another one. I think I have strong suspicions that he's not going to last for Batman Brave the Bold. He might do something else for Warner Brothers, horror related. I think, and I could be 100% wrong, but I have a strong suspicion that he is not going to be the final director for Batman Brave and the Bold, but he'll stay on as a producer, but be working on something else and maybe get a different DC movie in the future if his next feature outing is not a flop like The Flash.
I think it's fair to say that if your project is canceled and you attempt to go retrieve the footage and the production pieces out of the servers, and then you discover that you can't do that, and then you go to social media and complain about it, you are approaching something approximating moron territory.
Well, Zack Snyder did that.
Yes, well,
Like,
exactly.
He literally did that. They
don't understand who owns these things. They're arrogant and they are malignant narcissists when it comes to this sort of thing. They think they own the property despite the fact that they don't, simply because they were given it as the curator. And then when they fail to curate it well, then they believe that they're owed the right to have whatever they worked on. It doesn't work that way.
No, it doesn't. I mean, the fact of the matter is that a director, unless they wrote it and are self-producing it, it's not their film technically. They are the person that they're the teacher in class reading from the storybook, and you're the audience, the children in the class listening to it. And the way that they read it and the way that they add voices and whatnot is their interpretation that they're giving to you, but it is technically not really their story. It is technically the story of the person who either wrote it or the people that purchased that script and purchased the rights to it to own. Warner Brothers in this situation, they own Batgirl. They made a deal with the federal government that they're not going to release it in order to get a tax benefit. The reason they could do that for Batgirl and not for The Flash is because Batgirl 1 was intended to be released on streaming, and therefore, unlike other movies that go for features, feature films are technically pre-sold to varying degrees internationally to help finance those films. Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny is a UK film technically, but it was also pre-sold to other markets, one of those being the United States. The Flash, US-based film, did have significant production overseas, but it also had, I think all of its paperwork was primarily filed in Atlanta, Georgia, but if I'm wrong, please correct me. But it was also pre-sold in the development stages between 2013 and 2014 for international markets to finance the film. So they could never be able to write that off without having to give all that money back or break those deals and face legal action. So Batgirl was an easy one to write off. What we've got here is a desperate social media campaign that is aping what Zack Snyder and his public relations firm tried to do and successfully did to get the movie resurrected and released so that they can make some extra cash and also use it as a calling card and reputation piece to get further work. I actually feel very sorry for Brendan Fraser and Michael Keaton. I would have loved to see them on screen together, battling it out in some regards, even if it wasn't a bad movie, you could always take that highlight, just like with regards to The Flash. Even though it's not a great movie, you can take into some highlight points that there are a couple of interesting and fun Michael Keaton as Batman moments. Overall, I don't think it's really worth the price of admission. I would just wait for those clips to be released on high definition on YouTube or something of that nature. But it's just a bad attempt, and this is a dangerous trend that Ann Sarnoff, Toby Emmerich, Kevin Tsujihara, and the like were actually quite correct about, which is you cannot bow to an artificially inflated fandom of a specific film in the hopes of making money. Because basically, if there were as many Snyder fans out there as it is alluded to through social media, where were they at Black Adam? Where were they for Batman and v Superman? Were they for Wonder Woman, 84 and all that stuff? They weren't there. And if they did show up, they maybe only showed up twice. And that's not enough times to repeat viewings to signal to Warner Brothers that this is the direction we have to maintain and go for. And the same thing's going to be with the case for Batgirl. Like, you're never going to get a large enough voice that's authentic to justify Warner Brothers taking back that tax credit and releasing it. It's the only way it's getting out there is through a pirated leak, just like the Fantastic Four film from the 90s that Roger Corman produced.
And I'm sure I would enjoy. Well, I did enjoy that movie more than whatever Batgirl will be. That's a story for another day. I've been seeing all kinds of stuff, and the Snyder, whatever you want to call it, the embattled whatever online, it's so tiring. It's not even that it's just frustrating. It's so tiring to try to go on and like you said it perfectly, and I don't want to reiterate the point. Besides, if everyone was there, where were they at the theater? Where were they to make these movies hits? Don't tell me that these people were sitting at home waiting out the Justice League because Joss Whedon was going to have his chance at directing it. Because didn't Zack Snyder still get the credit on that theatrical release anyway?
He still has credit on it definitely as a producer. I think he may have a co-directing credit. And the other part too is that it was a mixed bag. He had finished most of the principal photography of that film. He had a tragedy in the family, which I wish on nobody. I'm so sorry that he went through that. Warner Brothers initially said you should take time off and not work on this for the moment. We have enough people to do it for you. Joss Whedon was technically brought in to help fix that part or pick up the slack on that so that he could go off. And then some other bad players at the studio decided to basically just push Zack Snyder further out and have Joss Whedon do more, because Joss Whedon was at that point in time the golden boy who did Avengers and Avengers 2, and they all made a buttload of money, and they wanted that money. And they also wanted it quickly because they had to get their end of the fiscal year bonuses. And basically Warner Brothers stopped being Warner Brothers around 1997, 1998. That's when big regime changes occurred. That's when they got acquisition of New Line. That is when you had, I keep forgetting his name, but it was Barry Mayer from 2001 to 2013. He was kind of the last sort of hope at Warner Brothers, because he's the one that brought in Harry Potter. He's the one that oversaw Lord of the Rings. He's the one that oversaw the Dark Knight trilogy. He's the one that kind of got caught with his pants down after Superman Returns, realizing that he has to make another Superman movie right away or he risks losing the rights to the character. And so Man of Steel was rushed. That's how he got that so quickly. And then when that didn't perform well, he kind of left, sort of soft retired, and Kevin Tsujihara came in. And for some reason, he figured, oh, okay, we'll keep the cast, we'll keep the director, and we'll just add in Batman to salvage this thing, because we want to make sure we can get this running and catch up to Marvel. And then they kept on betting on the same horse again with diminishing returns. And then they started betting on the same style and tone again with diminishing returns. And now it's basically culminating with this year here, where The Flash is going to underperform, which everybody at Warner Brothers Discovery knew this was going to be. I think they were actually surprised it made the money it did. They thought they were going to be making less. The projections say 60. I think they were thinking internally, we'd be lucky if we get 20 million of this over the weekend. I firmly believe that, because they knew this was going to be bad. It was a 10 years in production film. They already have the controversy with Aquaman 2. They know they're going to end this year terribly. Guess what? They're not afraid. They know. Their worst case scenario is beyond anything we outside of their offices can imagine. And I don't think it's going to get there. I think they're going to be very happy for this, and they're going to be very encouraged with the next couple of years, because it's the first time Warner Brothers and DC is going to have potential since the debut of Man of Steel and its poor reception.
And like I said to you off air, there's an entire generation of people who just don't know DC as anything but a disappointment factory. I mean,
yeah,
you can argue certain movies made money. Does that mean they're good? That's, subjective. But they don't have their finger on the pulse. It's been decades since DC. I'd say the last time DC felt like the belle of the ball was in 2008 with The Dark Knight, and then after the hype of that movie died, and the MCU kept moving forward, DC just kept tripping over itself. And as just an outside viewer, I mean, their movies take lesser priority. And I like Batman. I love Batman. He's my second favorite superhero. But just across the board, I know walking into one of these things, it's not going to be good as this one. And they become less and less of an important thing to see. And the ones that, all the Warner Brothers stuff that came out during the pandemic on HBO Plus, or HBO Max, excuse me, those were terrible. Birds of Prey, Wonder Woman 84, like, Wonder Woman 84 may be the most embarrassing superhero movie in years. People don't talk about it anymore because it's terrible. But I mean, what was that movie? And I mean, in the broader scale of things, it was so... That's what happens when you gave, I guess, the director more power. She produced that. And
she produced that, and she had the story idea, and then she hired an assignment writer named Dave Callahan, who doesn't have a creative bone in his body, but he manages to put words on the page quickly and effectively. And that's who was the scribe of Wonder Woman 84. He did Shang-Chi. He did Mortal Kombat 2020. Yeah, like he's got a lot of stuff in the pipeline prior to the writer's strike, because he's fast at what he's doing. I recommended the animated movie that he wrote a few weeks ago, America the Motion Picture, which I can't remember if you guys seen it yet.
We looked it up because it had like RoboCop looking.
Yeah.
Oh my god,
RoboCop Paul Revere. Yeah. He's not very good, but he gets the job done in the time frame, and that's the thing. Warner Brothers has been in a panic since Iron Man. They initially weren't too worried about, because The Dark Knight did so well, but when Thor was doing better, when Captain America was doing better, when Iron Man 2 was doing better, where was DC and where was Warner Brothers? They're like, all we got is Harry Potter right now. My God, what the heck's going on? We are so far behind. And then they go to Christopher Nolan and they say, hey, listen, we want to bring in Superman and these characters into your Batman universe. He's like, no. And that was just it. He's like, no. It's like, we'll make you producer of Man of Steel. I don't care. Let me go make my superficial Kubrick-esque type films. And that's what he's done.
Well, here's a great thought experiment for everybody. Given what Marvel is going through right now, given how far they have fallen, what would DC be doing if they just had at least average films? Which really goes to show you just what an opportunity they have lost here. Because if they just had average films, I think that the superhero fans would be looking to them as an antidote to what Marvel has been doing. Unfortunately, DC is limping along perhaps even worse, and that's really saying something right now, given Phase 4 and Phase 5.
Well, I mean, they're only in reputation are they limping along worse. I mean, I'm not holding much credence with the financial woes. I think they've accounted for this because they knew David Zaslav knew going in this is going to be a tough time. The fact that he managed to get that $3 billion in synergy in record time shows that he knows what's going. He's got plans and he knows what's going on. He is willing to take the black eye on Warner Brothers Discovery for the next year and a bit until we start getting the newer content by James Gunn and his team, which his team I've gone on record saying is not perfect. You should get rid of Tom King immediately. You should get rid of Christina Hodgson immediately. They may be of the taste that he likes, but their track record and their output is antithetical to what he's trying to do. And also they don't really explore the things that James Gunn likes, which is he likes hearts in his story. He likes having connections. He likes getting emotions. He likes finding a purpose for why this story is being told. And
should they have ripped the Band-Aid off and done a hard reset? Or do you like
they technically
this approach
are.
they're doing?
I mean, they're technically
yeah, but it's a little bit. It's not a unified.
It's ambiguous in structure just because they've never done anything like this before. And James Gunn is trying to balance between not damaging the brand any further than it already is, at the same time trying to encourage people that his DC universe starts with Superman Legacy. And he's made that little talk about the Blue Beetle's the first DCU character, but that is just him trying to sort of separate, the stigma of what has come before from that film to try and give it a chance. But the odds of like Zolo coming back and whatnot, he's getting too old for a Blue Beetle character, at least this iteration of him. Jaime Reyes. Jaime Reyes is supposed to be like 17, and Zolo is a big buff guy now. Like he's not the kid in season 1 of Cobra Kai anymore who looked like a 17-year-old. The guy is looking closer and closer to 30 with each year, and yeah, it's not going to last too much. So essentially they're going to draw a line in the sand. I think we're going to get that announcement in very late 2024. And basically saying this is the official, this is the reset, this is it. Forget what you know about DC. This is the new plan, new game, and that's going to perk people up a little bit. And the only thing that can hurt them is, repeating the same mistakes that happened before. And I'm crossing my fingers and hoping that they don't, because we need a second wind, a breath of fresh air. We need a superhero modeled that distributes the same way kind of horror films are to a degree, not oversaturated, but like reasonably budgeted, tentpole style, and on a reliable schedule that allows people to have a very good respite between entries.
How do you think Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning? How do you think that is going to impact the way Hollywood views the way forward with superhero films seemingly underperforming? You've had Top Gun Maverick do exceedingly well. Now we're going to get Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. It is receiving phenomenal reviews right out of the gate. Again, back to intense practical effects. And I'm just curious if Hollywood is going to come away from that saying, you know what? We don't need all this very expensive superhero CGI. We just need somebody crazy enough to ride a motorcycle off a mountain.
Well, I mean, I wish they'd get back to that. The problem is that it's so much safer to do digital effects. But it's
You're not kidding there.
It's also incredibly abused. I mean, the loopholes that Tom Cruise and his production company have to go through with insurance and with deals with the studios to do the stunts that he does are very expensive, and they're also very very stress inducing, and unfortunately no one else is at that level of Tom Cruise to do that elsewhere, and so they're always going to go in the more safer direction. What you really need, and sadly the practical effects industry has been shrinking every year, which is terrible, because practical effects are what hold up over time, and digital effects are supposed to make the practical effects more convincing. And right now it's the other way around. It's where the practical is just putting the guy in front of the volume or a green screen, chroma keying in a background, and trying to make the background more convincing or as convincing as the person standing in front of it. And you end up having unnatural delays. And if you screw up in setting your plates and getting that in order, you have to go back and reshoot. And that's one of the things that's been happening with the rise of the digital compositing and digital volumes is we've been seeing big tentpole films having far more reshoots than otherwise would be necessary, whether it's for story beats, whether it's for basically just on-set errors that occurred that were difficult to catch because everybody is still kind of in the experimental stage with this technology. It is not as reliable as they think. And the other part too is people aren't getting creative with it anymore. Like I've got friends that are working on a project that is going to be shot entirely on the volume, but the stuff that they're planning out and what they want to do has never been done before. And based on the concepts that they have, you watching it would never know it was filmed in a warehouse with a digital virtual reality screen around it. Like that's what they're doing, and they're doing it under a really low budget, like I think $4 million. But we don't get any of that stuff on the temple side of things because, again, nobody wants to be that inventive. Nobody has time to be that risky, and there's a lack of life and enthusiasm on that. It's almost to the point where some of these people feel it like a work in a sweatshop, as opposed to, hey, let's have fun with this. Let's plan out with this. Let's be inventive with camera techniques this way. That's the lost art right now. And as much as I'd love to see a real car chase again, like something where you know for sure the cars are traveling at minimum 60 miles per hour, it's just not in the bag anymore. They don't want to risk accidents on set. They don't want to risk injuries, death. One of the big points of the negotiations with the DGAs, the director guilds, recent contract is they want more on-set safety, which means if you have more on-set safety, you have less risk when it comes to practical effects and stunts.
Do you think
And
under the new guidelines, it would be difficult to make a movie like John Wick 4 or like Top Gun Maverick?
it depends. Well, it wouldn't. It would only be difficult in the sense that it'd be more expensive.
Well, that's more difficult.
Yeah.
I'll take
I mean,
that.
like, again, the professionals are there and they can do it, and they're very good at the job. But again, it's not 100%. There's always accidents and injuries. But if you want those people, you got to pay for it. And the way the relationship between the studios and the audience is going right now, the money isn't technically there, or at least the collateral for getting. Because again, studios don't really have liquid cash. They like to operate in the red because they can get better tax write-offs and move money around and better deals for them. But ideally, they lose the collateral needed to get the loans or the lines of credit to finance the films, and also get, when they do pre-sales of it, they won't get as much dollar because it's like, well, what happens if there's an accident on set with Tom Cruise and he misses his jump and he doesn't catch anything and he drops 300 feet and dies? Well, we're not going to be the money that you pre-sold is going to go all to insurance. The movie's going to end. No, we're not going to get what we want. We're not going to do that deal, so we're not going to take it anymore. And that's the risk. And there's not an industry for that. At least that part of the industry is slowly dying out, which is the way it is. I think Top Gun, sorry, not Top Gun. I think Mission Impossible will perform quite well. It might have a very familiar rise and run in theatrically as Top Gun did. It's going to take maybe a minute, but maybe the success of Top Gun will allow it to have a really big, solid opening and a steep climb up to some
Would
$1
if that's the case, it would be the biggest movie of the summer.
Yeah, and what's wrong with having Tom Cruise back-to-back years biggest movies of the summer? I mean, it would be.
I'm all for it because for all the hurdles, for all the difficulties, that's the kind of movie I want to go see. I want to go see. I want to go sit down and wonder, how did they do that? I want to go sit down and be amazed. I want it to be an event. I have to see it on the big screen. And the problem with CGI is, sure, there are ways to do things with CGI where I'm going to have a similar sort of reaction, but it's going to be based on a different format. In CGI, you're going to have to show me something that I didn't know you could do, and then I'm going to say, "Whoa!" But
and the other part
idea
too
that
is
I'm going to watch CGI characters, jump building to building or be blown through a universe and be as amazed as knowing that's really Tom Cruise and he's really in a fighter jet, it's not even close.
Well, you don't even. I mean, he's really in the fighter jet, but someone else is flying it, which is, at least for the insurance purposes, in most cases, that's the case. But
he's still under the same G-force.
Yes, he's still. Well, no, he's still physically experiencing it. But the other time too, when you make it too real, you lose the magic of acting, and that's the other part too. Like with Tom Cruise, I love the fact that he does a lot of these stunts, but at the same time, he's also an actor, and he's a very good actor in my opinion. I mean, he's had some misses here and there, but he's a guy that's very dedicated and very committed. But the other part too is you don't want to go so method with your practical that you actually lose the essence of the acting, because then you end up getting lost in the role, and then that causes a whole bunch of other issues I don't want to get into. But when it comes to, say, CG, the technology is there to make it so convincing that you can be fooled. The problem is it costs a lot of money, it takes a lot of time. You can have an actor in a studio scene with a couple of markers and some elevated flats, running and jumping the exact distance of an alleyway, but it's in a safer environment, and you can recreate the weather conditions and everything inside and make it perfectly convincing. But you're not CGing the actor, you're CGing the background, and that's kind of what the tool is supposed to be. You'd be doing it with bigatures, or you'd be doing it with mirrored paintings of like a pit to infinity type of thing, like they did with Star Wars. Like, you'd have to have that balance and connect and symbiotic relationship between the practical and the digital. And you have to also know, what do you actually have to use? What do you have to use digital for, and what you don't need to use it for? So I would never use digital to replace actors. That shot in The Flash where Batman is planting bombs on the Kryptonian and jumping around on them, that looked terrible.
Oh yeah.
It looked worse than a cartoon. And but the thing is, you can actually do that with a real stunt guy and a smaller guy, and you could composite that in there and make it look real because it'll actually match physics and whatnot. But they didn't do that. They're like, no, we'll just computer animate it. We can replicate the imaging, the movement and everything of that nature. But truth be told, is you can't right now. Not yet. Someone will eventually. It's going to happen. But right now, maybe you can put some money around to experiment, see it doesn't work, and toss and say, okay, we'll try again later on another movie one day down the road. But stick with the practical. Keep human beings as human beings in your movies. Uh, you can computer animate or digitally replace a character like they do with Avatar, like they did with Ahmed Best in Star Wars. But ideally, you don't want to have a fully animated thing, for at least for a human. Animal is much easier to replicate,
Well, I thought.
because some of them
Okay,
we don't
sorry.
see as often.
I thought they did a good job with Iron Man, especially the first one. I understand some of it was CGI, some of it was a practical suit that Robert Downey Jr. wore. But even back then, and watching it through today's lens, like it's hard to tell what's real and what's fake, and I like that. Now I know
Only if you have motion blur on can you tell what's real and fake, because that highlights it huge. But yeah, go on, Jeff. You're absolutely right.
I would just say, like, you're right. It's supposed to be a tool to supplement these things, and like even like a Fast and Furious, which is not high art at all, and I've given up on watching those movies because they suck. But like when those were real cars out on the streets, when they were real things that people were jumping from, it was a lot more intense to watch. They talk about the uncanny valley, and especially if you look at people's faces, you can tell. But I think we all know when we're looking at a CGI dummy, and it's just like any old movie when you watch an old Bond movie and there's a dummy in the car, or like in Temple of Doom when all the guys, the thuggy cult guys, are falling off the bridge and they're just puppets falling down. Like, it's not real, and it takes you out of this story so much. And Script, I'm with you. I have a lot more excitement. Like, I'm not saying you don't, Script, excuse me, I'm with you, Pro, about like the Tom Cruise element. I grew up liking Tom Cruise movies enough, but as an adult, I really like what they bring to the table, and that's why I'd resonate with the last Top Gun, or I was really into John Wick, or I was really into these movies that I don't need to watch Infinity War with a million characters and portals opening up. It's like
Oversaturation.
overstimulation. Yeah. It's not enjoyable. It's when everything is so gaudy and so flashy, then everything is just crappy. It's like watching a cartoon. Like when you look at the Hulk on screen with the other characters, it doesn't blend as well as it could. There's just something that's always missing. And I for one, my favorite movies are about the people and the characters and their motivations and their stories. Script, we've talked about Back to the Future ad nauseum on this channel, and I'll never get tired of it. But that movie only has a handful of special effects shots. The beauty and the magic of Back to the Future isn't the time-traveling car or the flying car or all those crazy effects. It's the story, it's the characters, it's time history repeating itself. And the special effects, the best special effects of the day, were used to just supplement a great script. And there's so many holes. Like, I didn't even get to talk to you about all my issues with The Flash because I gave it like a 6 out of 10. It's fine and watchable, but if I really were to go back and watch it again, I definitely would think it is a lesser of a film. And people aren't showing up, and I understand that that's not always an indicator of a good film, is how many people have actually seen it, but I think it's an indicator of people just being tired of crap. Like, money's tight, things are different now, and people aren't going to drop $20 to go watch a puppet of Batman jump around the screen. Like, when Michael Keaton's playing the character, and when he's not.
Think about the difference in how action once was in cinema. Today we go and we watch these massive citywide battles that occur in the air, and entire buildings are exploding, and giant monsters are doing all kinds of crazy special effects. It's not as exciting as watching Indiana Jones and one guy fight underneath a spinning plane and wondering, what's going to happen with the propeller. That's where the tension is.
Yep.
And that's being lost because these directors, these writers, when they get that big budget and they get that once in a lifetime chance to spend the money and get those big teams behind them, they go crazy. And they want to play with every single tool there is. And in doing so, they often forget that you don't need all of it in order to have the audience on the edge of their seat. You need a fantastic idea for your sequence. You need an interesting place to have it occur. And more importantly, you have to have heroes that the audience is truly rooting for and believe that they might actually lose.
Yeah, you also need to remember that with it comes to cinematography, the clearer you make the shot, the more engaged the audience will be. One of the things I love about Japanese, South Korean, and Chinese cinema is when they have a combat scene, you see it, like it's what they're doing. It may be heavily choreographed to the nth degree, but when a punch lands. You don't have a quick cut away from it like you do in modern day Western films. Like you actually have choreography. You've got Jackie Chan jumping over barrels and through ladders and cages and whatnot and fighting off bad guys. You got Bruce Lee doing the same thing, out in the middle of a field, and all these guys are running at him and he's just taking them down one by one. Like those are the things that we like. We like the verisimilitude of, oh, the camera's locked down. We're getting a shot of these guys coming after him, and every once in a while we'll get maybe a close up here or a medium shot there, but it's a very human perspective on that thing. And then conversely, you have something like, and the movie I noticed at first was, of course, Batman Begins with Christopher Nolan, where you have 40 or 50 shots of a fight between Batman and three thugs, and you can't make heads or tails of what's really going on. And it's supposed to be, film technique, but really it's just hiding the fact they did not have enough time to choreograph a fight properly, and they're hiding it in the edit. And they do the same thing. They did it with Liam Neeson, not just in Batman Begins, but also in all of his Taken films. John Wick is one of the few films that actually pulls back a little bit, but I haven't seen the most recent one to see if that's the case, where did they lock off the camera and you can see all the fights and the guns and stuff. I don't know. But Marvel films, they don't even do that either. Like they'll give you maybe a quarter of a second of an exchange of blows, and then they'll cut to another angle, and then they'll cut to another angle, and then they'll cut to another angle. And it's like, well, it appears like it's intense, but you're losing the engagement because you're changing perspective so quickly that it's not real. Because we as an audience, when we're just seeing a fight, we only have our own perspective. And when we're watching it happen, two things are occurring in our mind. Do we join in or do we just stay here and watch? And if the odds are against someone that you're rooting for, ideally you would join in and help them out. But the movies have lost that angle, at least on the tentpole side of things.
I blame the old Bourne movies for a lot of that. The clarity
God, yeah.
going right out the window. Like, that is something I'm so glad. When we talk about movie trends that we're thankful are pretty, I won't say completely dead, because you just brought up Marvel examples, but that early, I guess the first part of the second decade of the 2000s. I mean, even when that shit rolled into Bond with Quantum of Solace in 2008, so the first decade, excuse me, like, it's just, you don't even know what you're looking at. It's just sensory overload again, and it's not, those movies have aged so poorly. Like, any of the movies that are up in your face where they, like, tap the camera and shake every 5 seconds, it gets nauseating. I mean, I saw the first Hunger Games movie in theaters, and the way that the opening credits were edited, how it kept jumping around, this and that, I was just like, what am I even watching? It's disorienting. And you're not supposed to have that feeling in a movie. You're supposed to know what you're looking at and be engaged, not, kind of sick from watching just shit jump around every 5 seconds.
Right.
Now, we will check in with the audience, folks. We're keeping this show a tighter show tonight. But I do want to talk pro, since we're just 8 days away from Indiana Jones. And as you guys cover a lot of excellent Disney content, according to press information, it's going to take $800 million to break even. Do you think there's a snowball's chance in hell? Hey, more. Please tell me.
Well, yeah. So at the bare minimum, we know through tax filings that this thing had a production budget of $332 million. You add on, let's say, $100 million in advertising, but that's way low. I mean, they're
actually
it out
putting
for
more
Cam.
into it right now with some of the stuff I've been seeing around.
Yeah,
I think they're closer to 225 in advertising.
Right. So when you get this thing up to total production and marketing spend of $500 million, which I think is where it probably lands, it may go even higher. It needs $1 billion. It needs $1 billion to make a profit, and we are looking at The last thing I saw, they had actually bumped it up and thought that it was going to make something like 70 million domestic opening weekend. But I think that could be high. I mean, I've been watching these Disney releases. I watch the projections drop as we get right up to where they're coming out. I'm thinking this is like 55 to 65 million dollars opening weekend. I think it's bad, and I think the word of mouth is going to destroy it. I don't want to spoil it for the people out there who want to see it with pristine eyes, but I know what happens in this movie. I've talked about it with others at great length. It's going to make fans angry. This is good. This is going to make people very upset, and I think it's an unforgivable film for Kathleen Kennedy, which she's already gone off the deep end, of course, many times. But this truly is. This goes far beyond what she's done before. Well, I'll tell you this. I was talking with somebody who has watched this, and what they said to me is that Phoebe Waller-Bridge is more insufferable than anything that Brie Larson has ever done. And in fact, that it is more difficult to watch than She-Hulk. Now, I mean, and this is, I can't even imagine. Now, the shills have come out recently because they've got to lift that score, right? So they've been whining and dining. They have actually, Disney doesn't typically do this, but they've been having alcohol bars, sitting out there, get you good and buzzed up before you go watch Indy. And, it's still, if you watch these reviews, even out of the shills, they get to the ending and they say, there's something in the third act I just disagree with. And then they go on and they talk about more stuff and they give it the 5.5 out of 10 or the 6 out of 10 that it takes to get it into positive territory. But I'm telling you right now, this is going to make fans very, very angry.
I followed the leaks. We did the first rumor video, which I knew sounded fake, so I even said it in the video. But then there was a guy on Reddit who gave a very detailed approach to the movie, because he's like, I was at the Cannes Film Festival, and people didn't believe him, so he went and elaborated and answered every question. And I've been operating under that information. I'll definitely ask you more off air at another time, but like, the new commercial on TV shows the scene that confirms the shit I was reading about in that review. So like the shot of them jumping out of the airplane, I'm like, oh wait, the time travel shit that people, and this is old news, folks. I'm not spoiling it here for you. That's in the commercial. That go back and watch that shot in the commercial on television.
They're showing the ending of the movie.
Boats. Yeah, that's the end of the movie. Like, do you really want to watch Indiana Jones get like beat up and taken back to the present? I have nothing left to live for. Like, who are you? You're the guy that got dragged by a truck across the desert to fight the German soldiers to get the Ark back, to take back home and beat the Nazis and all this shit. Like, why does every great character have to have such a dour ending? Because this kills franchises, folks. You think, guys, it's just one bad movie. It's over. People won't watch the old ones. They won't go back and buy the box sets. Look at Crystal Skull. That rubbed a lot of people the wrong way for 15 years, and now it's somehow worse.
I think that the reason that James Mangold has been such a douche online is because he knows that he is creating a movie that is deeply career damaging and will put him on track with some of the people who've worked on Star Wars. I think this is a Kathleen Kennedy film. I think that she and Frank Marshall have deeply impacted the way that this would go. I have news for you. So we did a video yesterday on my channel. I don't know if you saw this, but the ending for Indiana Jones was reshot, and we know that now definitively. Harrison Ford has admitted it. I don't know that he was supposed to admit it, but he did in an interview that was basically unseen for Spanish television that we managed to find. And then, here's the bottom line from that. Besides the fact that Mangold lied, I believe, the ending was reshot. And he was quite insulting to anybody who reported otherwise up until now. The thing about this is, and I don't want to say what happens in the movie, but towards the end, when something happens that is probably unforgivable in all of cinema. I mean, this is just, you should never do this. It cuts to black. And then there's a part of the ending that takes place after it cuts to black. It is extraordinarily likely that the ending we have is not the ending that was, based on what Harrison Ford has said. And based on that, I actually think that some of those earlier leaks may have been true. Now, I don't know that it went as far as what was alleged, but I think that someone, possibly Iger, looked at this film in November or December and said, "Oh my God, you can't do this. Reshoot the ending now." And that's why you had John Williams come out and say, "We're going to reshoot the ending," and then you had Mangold coming out and say, "No, no, that's untrue. He's mistaken." And but it apparently it is true. And I don't know what that original ending was, but it must have been bad, because what we have, number one, is terrible. And number two, it makes no sense. I really wish I could go into the spoilers. I won't. But just suffice to say that the ending no longer makes any sense either. Like you spend 5 seconds on it and you go, "Well, wait a minute. None of that makes any sense." And that's because I think they jettisoned the original ending and went with something different.
I'm dreading this. I mean, Harrison Ford's my favorite actor. I don't care that he's a douche in real life. I love the movies. But my
Yeah.
God, we saw Han Solo get the short end of the stick, and now Indiana Jones. And it's like all the great characters, and I'll make this personal for a second, but all the great characters I grew up with, him, Indy, Spider-Man, James Bond, like all these great iconic characters just are kind of like thrown to the wayside for really stupid ideas that then they have to go and fix. And in the case of Harrison Ford, where he is the character. Yes, he's the actor and the man, but he is Indiana Jones, and no one else can play that role. Like, they just, I don't get, like, Lucas and Spielberg knew at least how to leave these characters originally in a place where people want to go back forever. Like, a lot of people may not realize this, but Indiana Jones had his own version of novels and comic books and tons of video games in the 90s. For the entire decade, Indiana Jones kind of still lived. Maybe there wasn't another film, but the character was still around in multimedia, even on television with the young Indiana Jones. They pulled Harrison Ford out for an episode or so. Like, this is so damaging to the point where you turn off guys like me who will buy Indiana Jones figures. It doesn't matter. Oh man, the movie sucked. I'll still get the old ones. There's a point in time, like with Star Wars, I used to on average buy 2 to 3 Star Wars figures a month. I'd get the ships, I'd get the books. Even if I didn't read them, I'd collect them just to have them. I'd pick up the comic books. I'm not like personally offended, but I'm just tired, and I can't support these stupid and bad decisions with my money. And I know there are a million people out there that do the same, because we see the numbers. We watch the toys not sell. We watch these games, have lukewarm receptions. We see all of this stuff. And I mean, Lucasfilm expects this upcoming Indiana Jones game to be a big hit. Disney needs a win. If they shit the bed with this movie, they'll probably cancel that game. And that's a big budget game from a good studio. Indiana Jones hasn't had a good game in 20 years, excuse me. And it's all dead. Like, I don't understand what Kathleen Kennedy has against Indy, or what she has over people, that she's able to get away with this crap, but she's pissed away some of the two greatest legacy franchises in history. And I'm done, man. Like, what else does Lucasfilm have to offer anymore?
Well, they can start borrowing franchises from other studios to kill. That's about all they've got left. But did either of you see the photo of George Lucas after he came out of the screening the other day of The Dial of Destiny?
I did,
Yeah.
man. I'm following this movie closely, like more so than I
He
even went on
has-
with the channel.
He has a shocked face.
He has the same. It's the same face that Mark Hamill had after he saw The Last Jedi for the
Yeah.
first time. It's the same face. It is a look of nausea.
I mean,
dreading
what else
this.
can you say there? I mean, to circle a little bit back with regards to the box office, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny would be lucky to make what Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker made. And
Oh yes,
that
yes, it
threshold
be
would
very
probably
lucky.
make them to be a little bit profitable, because the Rise of Skywalker, publicly on the books, they're going to say was profitable, but I happen to have heard enough to say that they were very lucky to get what they did, because they spent way too much on that movie. And we're seeing something similar here.
Something
but-
in excess of $500,000 or $500 million, right?
Yeah, because again, they technically, the rumor is that we know officially that they shot the movie twice.
Yes.
There's a rumor that they technically shot it 3 times.
And then they were into production even weeks before release, correct?
They were into production within 48 hours of debut.
Oh my gosh. I had
Um,
not heard that.
Yeah, I had heard that because I learned from a relative of mine who works in post production. It says all they need is for reshoots and things of that nature. After the initial assets are built, all they need is 48 hours minimum or 48 hours maximum. Sorry, to redo the render and redo the composite to export out for ready for digital distribution. Because most theaters don't get film cans anymore; they are plugged into a network where they digitally broadcast the films on the
I
projector
mean,
screen.
are there any that receive cans any longer?
Only outdated ones, and they have to spend a lot of money to have the negatives
Yeah.
developed and sent to them, and it's out of their pocket, so they don't usually do it. They end up taking out a loan, getting the digital connections put in, and going that way.
Script, Jeff, I'm gonna go way out on a limb here. I think this movie is lucky to make $500 million. I think the word of mouth will sink this.
Mhm.
Mission Impossible comes out 12 days after it comes out. It has 12 days, in my opinion, to make 75% of its revenues because it will die the minute that Mission Impossible comes out.
I agree with that.
Yeah.
And I don't think your number's too far off from what I would guess because I'm going by this. Star Wars and Indiana Jones have always been so intrinsically linked, even though they're not in the same universe. You got to understand, it's like back in the day it was just the 1-2 whammy of Lucasfilm. You had Star Wars, you had Indy. You had really crappy Star Wars, and you coming off of a crappier Indiana Jones movie, like the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is god awful. I mean, go watch the South Park episode to see how people talk about how Indiana Jones was treated 15 years ago. You're not going to have 50, you don't have 15 years of goodwill. You don't have 15 years of curiosity. It's kind of like, well, I can't come up with a good example off the top of my head, but I think you're in the right ballpark of this movie not delivering. And also, too, and I hate to say it like this, Indiana Jones is not really relevant to the modern generation of people. I was born in '88. So Indiana Jones came out last one came out when I was 6 months old. Yes, I consider the other one not existing. But you grew up in a decade where Indiana Jones was the litmus test for action adventure heroes. Like what you would reference Bond is the spy. That was it. It was the big spy character. Even though there were dozens of characters in Napoleon Solo and all these other ones, James Bond was the reference point for everything. Indiana Jones was the reference point for everything. We don't
And then those
have
came
that
together
anymore.
with The Last Crusade.
And it's such a good movie, man. I've watched the Indiana Jones trilogy a handful of times when producing the videos because that's my secret to making some of this content. If I feel dejected, I go back and watch these great movies, and instead of going and lamenting the fact that they're shit, I think how they make me feel, like with Temple of Doom or Raiders of the Lost Ark or The Last Crusade. I'm excited by them, and I get that good feeling back. But on the flip side, I do get that dread, and that's where a lot of my concern comes from, and where my guesses come from.
Well, let's have some fun with how dumb Disney is, and Kathleen Kennedy. So let's just have some fun. Let's say that Phoebe Waller-Bridge was not playing essentially what will be the lead role for the movie. By the way, she's basically the star. Let's say that it was not her, and let's say that they brought Short Round back. How much more money is that worth? And they didn't do it.
Double whatever it'll make because they don't even have to worry about the Oscar. People love a comeback story. Ke Kwan is not only Short Round, but he's a Goonie. Dude, back in 2008, I remember reading tons of message boards. Why wasn't Short Round in this movie? What about Short Round? Why didn't they have him at the wedding? Short Round is this loved character that nobody thinks to touch because it's a stereotype. It's from a bad movie. Temple of Doom is not a bad movie. That's just
it's not a bad
revisionist
movie.
crap.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the other part too. One of the reasons that the Crystal Skull did as well as it did was Karen Allen and reuniting with Harrison Ford.
Yep. Absolutely.
100%. I mean, the story was bad, but people just wanted to see those two together. And even though the movie was terrible, that is one heck of a great happy ending for Harrison Ford, for Jones and Marion. I mean, come on, they finally got together. Everybody was wanting that. That's a great way to kind of go out on. And even a nice little like nudge to the fact that Indy took his hat before his stupid son grabbed it.
Well, if you came into the movie late. If you came into the movie late and you did not see, like, let's say that you walked in immediately after the fridge scene, and then you fell asleep as soon as they get into the Peruvian caves. Okay, so as soon as they get over there with Mutt and Indy, as soon as they start to go underground. If you fell asleep then and woke up when Indy is getting married, you'd think it was a great film that you had just missed.
Yeah.
There are good parts of the film. There's just so much of it that's so bad.
Well, they betray the sad thing with Indiana Jones and the Crystal Skull is it betrayed the premise of Indiana Jones, which is the fact that he's an archaeologist and a scientist who keeps facing religious figures in his pursuit for artifacts or just to help people. I mean, the Temple of Doom is he's just helping that village because they're going to be able to find a way to help him get home somehow. Like that's kind of the deal that they've got going on. He's with Raiders of the Lost Ark. He's assigned by the government to do this. With Last Crusade, he's looking for his dad. So those are the personal elements of it, but each one takes him to a different religion where he's facing the supernatural God, so to speak, of that religion from his perspective. And the movie is basically saying it's maybe supernatural to you, but it's real within this universe. And that premise was abandoned in the Crystal Skull, and based on the leaks and reports with Dial of Destiny, it's also abandoned there. And the fact of the matter is there's many different religions throughout the world with that's a deep history, beautiful artifacts that all could have been explored, and Indy was a perfect vehicle to do that. And they kind of forgot that's where that was the framework, the spine. So outside of the characters of what this was, it's like they just decided, okay, we're going to go space because 50s and space race, just at the start of the space race and all that stuff. It's like, no, man, you could have done something great with Russia and Norse mythology and Norway and that, or you could have done something with something in Africa or something in China. Like, just give us something crazy and fun that goes into what makes Indiana Jones kind of question reality, essentially, within his world.
Well, I mean, we're 8 days away, and folks, believe me, we will not slack on the coverage of that film. We've been talking about it for quite a while, and you guys definitely enjoy that kind of content. So join me next week. I'll have episode 363, because remember, we're going live tomorrow night instead of Thursday night because I'll be out of town, but I'll be live streaming GMPC on the road, so be on the lookout for that. But remember, folks, episode 362, will be the Indiana Jones and the Dial of Destiny review. I am not excited for it, but hey, I can't really run the channel without being able to see the movie to talk about it, because
I imagine that video just being one long bleep censor sound. Just 30 minutes. Maybe we'll hear your breathing in between.
I'll tell you, this is the last point I make before we check in with the audience. It's not the Last Crusade, The Force Awakens. I walked out of that movie and I said, I have been emotionally gutted. That was hard to sit through. If this movie makes me feel like that, you will hear what sounds like I haven't slept for a month, because I will not be excited at all. And you can tell me stuff off there. I don't need to go in with. You can tell me all the spoilers. And
I'm just going to send you blood thinner. That's what. Okay, I'm going to send you medication to get you through this situation.
Oh, there we go. Was it Coumadin is a blood thinner?
I don't want you to stroke out. Yeah, Coumadin will work. We just gotta make sure that you get through it. The blood's still flowing through the arteries. There's going to be constriction, but that you're going to be okay.
I'm a strong guy. I think I can make it through this. But folks, you definitely want to hear the review, and you definitely want to be watching all of the videos about. I keep wanting to call it The Last Crusade. No, that's a great movie. The Dial of Destiny, DOD. I'll pass.
Yeah, I'll be paying attention to the papers when I read an article saying Andre the Giant is alive and he just destroyed a theater.
Well, I go to Northern Kentucky movie theater, so be on the lookout for the AMC or the Regal there. Yeah. It'll be found footage of this giant.
There you go, folks.
Okay. Rips the seats out of the floor and just throws it at the screen.
There you go, folks. If you were in Northern Kentucky, all the way up to Cincinnati, you may walk out and hear the screams of one man sitting there in the theaters of Dial of Destiny.
It'll just be me going, why? Now, folks, we keep this show nice and tight now to keep the entertainment value high, but that doesn't mean we're not going to get in contact with you guys. So our friend Shrubbles08 gave us a word of the day. It is Coke.
Rebels!
Debbie does Coke. The day the Coke stood still. Not with Debbie around. The Flash with Coke. Star Wars, The Coke Awakens. A Fistful of Coke. That's just Scarface, bro. The Last Coke Fighter. And Unbroken Coke.
Beverly Hills Coke.
Hey, dude, you win on that one because that's the premise of the movie.
Yeah, I know.
And the word of the day. And I'm a little upset that you beat me to a punch with my favorite movie. Oh, man. God, I need to watch that movie. It's been far too long. Avengers Infinity Coke. That's my title of the day. Shrubbles08. Thank you very much. Folks, you can play the word of the day at home. We'll continue to play the word of the day through this stream and tomorrow's WCBS stream. And a shout out to Shrubbles08 for keeping the word of the day alive. It's just part of the fan element of this channel that we greatly appreciate each and every week. Gearstruck says, good evening, High Council and chat. Looking forward to tonight's stream. Well, I hope you had a good time. I think this is one of the best shows we've had in a while. But then again, we've been having a stream of great shows there, Script Doctor. You've been a part of a lot of these. So thank you. And thank you, Pro, for joining us tonight. You have elevated this show. I'm going to go back and listen to this. I don't normally re-listen to shows, but I will tomorrow.
Happy to be here.
I am honored as always.
Is there a Cool Runnings button yet? No, Gearstark, I need to get on that. That is my own fault. I apologize. And I'll take a Terminator bike. All right, I'll press that and I'll get to the next message. So, folks, we took last week off of all the motorcycle buttons because of the passing of Treat Williams. But, you know, we gave the time and now you guys want the buttons back. So here you go, folks. Turn your volume down. This one might be a little too loud. Oh, he's gone. But you know what? It's to save the future from Skynet, so I'm thankful to the Terminator. Infinite Wander, you're about to be very happy. Jeff, have you watched the Paul Bunyan video yet? Yes, I have. There needs to be a Paul Bunyan kaiju fic, like Paul's chilling in Alaska during retirement when Big G shows up and does his thing. I might adapt that into a comic. Who knows? I came up with the title on last week's show, and so Paul Bunyan's in the public domain. Why the hell not? Infinite Wonder. I enjoyed the video. It's by a guy, folks, called Just Brandon. He's got a small channel, but the video's got a ton of views. So go check him out. Give him a thumbs up. Tell him that Infinite Wonder, care of World Class Bullshitters, sent you because I really liked what I saw. And again, folks, if you have recommendations, just let me know. I'd love to check out what you want us to watch. Adama, thank you very much again for everything. He says, hail the High Council, guests in chat. Jeff, the book I got at Ollie's is The Comic Book Artist's Workbook Perspective by Dan Cooney. I had his previous book that shows how to draw people and figures. Well, Adama, I wish I could find it off the top of my head. I actually bought that book at Ollie's not that long ago. It was a great value of a book. And the thing is, it's actually really helpful. Even though I have stuff out there, I'm always wanting to better my craft and hone my skills. And while perspective isn't necessarily that difficult, some of the stuff with multi-plane perspective and some of the multiple points of view and all that stuff was really helpful in that book. So, folks, if you want to check that book out, I highly recommend it. Adama and I both have it, and it really does help. It'll add a lot of depth to your work. Shrubbles08 says, I'll take a Joe Rogan high as fuck and a Joe Rogan slap nuts, please. All right. So I love this button, folks, and I'm so glad I made it. And it's been years, and I'm glad you guys still like it. So I don't know which one you're going to get first, but let's find out together.
Did you see that guy accidentally hit that moose with his car?
No.
Holy shit. Jamie, pull that video up.
It's Mr. Flatnut to you.
And here's the other one.
Imagine if you gave a white supremacist 5-MeO DMT, and then as the first one, as they're exhaling,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The Legion of Doom was the shit. Folks, we're going to have some more wrestling content. Check it out soon. And if you're a patron, we did a whole extra episode of the show today. I'll have that out this week. Infinite Wonder also says, one could make an argument that Paul Bunyan got a size-shifting power. There's got to be something you can do with a size-shifting kaiju. Ah, dude, of course you can. You can make up your own kaiju creature, make it based on a Lovecraftian-style design. I will finish Wokebusters first, but then I will jump into some of these crazy ideas. We can have our own comic book empire based on fun, crazy stuff. Wait till you hear the zombie concept I got in the future. That's going to be a good one. Enrique Vasquez, good friend of mine and the friend of the channel, says, Hail, High Council, Pro, on your 20K celebration stream, congrats. You slipped that 3 NCU in productions. Zelda is one. Will you let us know when the other 2 are?
The other one that we're aware of right now is that it seems like, okay, let me step that back one step. So Zelda is currently not technically in production because of the writer's strike. So let me clarify that. But we do know that Metroid is probably also in the planning stages. We've heard that through some third parties who have connections with Nintendo and know what is being requested of them to do focus groups, etc., in terms of gauging audience interest. So there you go.
And they're not wrong. I mean, the other part too is Zelda as a film has been in development for 2 decades almost. They've been trying to make it in some regards, and now it looks like they've got potential. So we'll have to wait and see what happens after the writer's strike.
But the tricky part about that is that there have been some articles out there that have said Zelda's not currently in production. I'm like, yeah, not much is.
Nothing is in production right now, technically.
So that's the trick the media has been doing. And you can't blame them. They're trying to make it so that when it's announced, they can say, oh my gosh. But we all kind of know it's out of the bag at this point.
Yep.
I mean, the head of Illumination is now on the board for Nintendo. I mean, they're going to make a lot of movies. We've got Chris Pratt out there talking about the Nintendo Cinematic Universe.
You know that they're going to experiment with a Donkey Kong again. They'll probably do a solo film for him in the near future.
The funny one? So this is crazy. We actually we had some information that came our way. Donkey Kong wasn't on the list, but Super Punch-Out was, which is just what a strange one. And then while we were talking about it, I believe it was live. I think I had Lauren on with me live. We found that there are references to Super Punch-Out, significant references that put it inside the world of Mario in the restaurant where they're I guess they're talking in the first couple of scenes of the movie. So
Mario's the referee technically in Super Punch-Out in one of the versions.
Yeah,
because it was originally Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, and they lost the licensing rights for that.
Is Mike Tyson back in good graces enough in the public eye to reintroduce him into the Nintendo Cinematic Universe? Because I wouldn't mind seeing cartoon CGI Mike Tyson after the Mike Tyson Mysteries on Adult Swim.
It would be hilarious.
He's okay, yeah. But again, there's still a huge divide when it comes to that. Like, not everybody knows all the situations that are surrounded Mike Tyson and his controversies and what he's been accused of and what he's been exonerated from. So I think until that gets cleared up, I think we're stuck with the regular Super Punch-Out for now. But it would be brilliant to have Mike Tyson in a
Dream
Nintendo movie about Punch-Out, because he would be the end boss.
At least in credit scene.
James and Chain says, Hail, it's my B-Day. Can I get an Eddie Murphy laugh, please? Never gets old to me.
I am going to try and find a way to let Eddie Murphy see that.
Dude, it comes from a Channel 4 commercial in the UK. It's actually a commercial they did for some sort of holiday special where they were going to run all the Beverly Hills Cop movies. And I may or may have not downloaded it and edited it into my own version of Axel F that plays normally, and then it cuts into the second part and it plays the laughs. Just putting that out there. I like the movie that much.
No, that's quite all right, man. But I think that'd be something he'd dig.
So Georgian says, Samuel L. Jackson sipping for Brie Larson, calling fans incels and revealing that she has TDS was not in my pop culture bingo card. Brie womp womp and buzz your girlfriend buttons, please. Sure. By the way, folks, I'll have a video about that out tomorrow. I just learned about it thanks to our friend Georgian. So folks, if you want to show some love to Georgian, press 1 in the chat for helping us discover that. And now, here are your buttons that you requested, Georgian. They're the newer ones, and I enjoy them quite a bit. So Let's press this one first.
Buzz your girlfriend. Woof.
And then up next is this one. It's an old favorite of mine, and it still works. She's the most loved woman in Hollywood. Thank you, though, Georgian, for your very generous super chat. TLJ Screwjob says, Batman vs. Superman. No one laughed or clapped or anything, and it was a full IMAX. Genuinely weird how silent it was leaving a packed theater like that. Well, it's kind of like a funeral for the characters, so what do you expect? Wait till Indiana Jones comes out. You might hear tears, sobbing, anger. You might hear, on a quiet, cold night, you might hear the angry calls of Jeff. TLJ Screwjob also says the worst part that it was in Atlantic City and a Christmas gift from my mom for my brother and I. We didn't hold it against her. Just a bad movie. Of course you're not going to hold it against your mom, but man, bad movies can ruin a good day. Trust me. I've lived
maybe
through
next time give me the Garbage Pail Kids instead.
The fact that that's a step up really is a damning indictment of Disney, or excuse me, of Warner Brothers. So Georgian asks, hey, Script Doctor, where's your strike sign?
Oh, right.
I'm impressed how quickly you were able to do that.
Yeah! And also, he requested this. TLJ Screwjob, thank you very much. He says, think Mario would beat Frozen 2 if released now, or would it still be better to release it in the original slot? Hindsight and all. Just wondering.
Are we asking about Frozen 3 or Frozen 2? I'm a little confused on this question.
I'm going to guess Frozen 3.
Okay. It would be very, very close. The thing is, does Mario act like Iron Man? And is it the stepping stone to much bigger movies, which would be hard to believe because it's already the second highest grossing feature-length animated film of all time. But if it acts like Iron Man and it opens up into an MCU that is far greater, then yes, it does. I also don't know that Frozen is quite as exciting anymore. It never registers on the Nielsen charts. It's always, if you find any of the Disney movies actually charting anymore, it's usually Moana or Encanto, and never Frozen. So that's something to take note of.
Admittedly, those are not in my wheelhouse, but
I guess you could say fans let it go. Bad joke of the night, folks.
Hey, that would have been perfect time for the Brie Larson womp womp, but we already got that one in. TLJ Screwjob says, what Jeff is talking about with F-Parents sounds a lot like I brought up a few weeks ago back about Let It Go being a foreshadowing to all of this stuff.
Sometimes there's a pattern you just can't ignore anymore, folks. Let it go. Let it go.
There's a lot of truth to that. Adamus says, a newer film with people who go through shit is the movie Push with Chris Evans, Dakota Fanning, and Camilla Bell. They go through their own arcs and overcome their own battles to defeat a common enemy. One of my favorites. Is that a comic movie or something like that? Or am I mistaking that for The Losers? Either way, I did not see that one with Chris Evans, but I'll check it out.
On my list now.
What'd you say?
I said it's on my list now. I haven't seen that one.
Oh yeah, that's an
like
old
Chris Evans.
sci-fi film. That's from a while ago. That's oh wait, I remembered that. It's kind of has similar to remember the Hayden Christensen film where he was the jumper.
Yeah, I didn't hate that movie.
Yeah, Push was kind of like a thing similar to that back in the day.
Gotcha. Have to go check it out.
Adam Wofford says, so remember, by the way, thank you, Adam Wofford. He says, so remember way back when the History Channel did a big special of Star Wars and how it had a mix of the Bible and Greek myths and goth horror, and I didn't see that for the new Star Wars movies. Also, Hercules did. 12. I'll press a 12 for you in a minute, but I do remember all those History Channel documentaries. I remember the one for Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. It was about the history of I almost said Benson and Hedges. That's a cigarette, but whatever the something Hedges Crystal Skull is, I remember that very well. And,
I think it means it's 12 Labors of Hercules. Sorry, that was my mistake. I keep thinking of 10 because I'm so used to basically metric.
Oh. I'm just a bad historian for not knowing that myself. I apologize. My first introduction to Hercules was in the 90s before the movie came out, and then I never watched that movie again. Sorry, Disney, you ruined that for me too. Adam Wofford, thank you very much. TLJ Screwshop says, speaking of giving yourself for spouse/others, my grandfather, before he passed away a few months, would always say he'd fight a lion if it meant I was safe.
Yeah.
He had a good family connection.
That's quite the gift.
Yeah, people today, I mean, they seem to not be as in touch with their family or care as much, which is very saddening. But I mean,
But doesn't it give you a tremendous sense of self-worth if there's someone who loves you that much that they would do such a thing? And I bet that grandfather meant it.
Oh, yeah. TLJ Screwjob also says, hashtag Doomcock was right. I recommend on your leak video a few weeks ago, Jeff, and I'm glad he's not dead. But Kathleen Kennedy probably said, your fans will wish Indy was.
There are worse things than death, Dr. Jones.
Yeah, the 5th movie. Woo. Don't bring it on. Now, Jun Wong says, what if Tom Cruise has already fallen to his death in a stunt and we're just watching his clone? Also explains why he doesn't age.
Welcome to artificial intelligence, ladies and gentlemen. It's all deep faked.
Oh, yeah.
What if life is just deep faked and we're just waiting for the computer to get unplugged? TLJ Screwjob. TLJ Screwjob says, yeah, the boats are wooden as they fall out. Yep. Go back and watch our spoiler review where I give the entire plot premise. It looks like I was right on the money with that one. Thank you to everyone who's already checked it out. Jack White, thank you for everything you've done for the WCBS channel. He says, Jeff, I sent you an email at the beginning of the show with a couple of links. Check them out. I will have Kendo drop those. I will send him a message right after I get off the show, and I will let you know what I think. If you want, I can either respond back to you on the show tomorrow night, or I can send you an email back. It is up to you, man. Just let me know. TLJ Screwjob, thank you very much. He says, is it just me, or even the dun 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 at the end of the Dial of Destiny trailer sound not that enthusiastic? Like, even the music hates the film.
Dun, 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 dun.
Well, the Disney has created the new trailer template, which I hate. You saw it with The Force Awakens, and they repeated it with The Last Jedi, and they did a little bit with the Avengers and the MCU. They start off small, and then they have that epic type of remix of the theme to try and make it sound hot. It's like that's you're being very transparent with your desperation for us to see your project, and also lazy because you're just replaying the exact same formula on the trailer each and every time.
I hate that, man. The fucking one note with the theme song that plays afterwards, it just pisses me off.
Oh, yeah.
Jack White says, good stuff to look forward to next month is the new Rurouni Kenshin anime, which airs on July 7th. Bungo Stray Dog Season 5 airs on July 12th. Well, Jack, could you do me a favor and let me know where this stuff debuts? I'm going to take a picture of your anime recommendations. Is that going to be on a Crunchyroll or one of the apps like that? Because I will happily watch this stuff and check it out if I know where this stuff is streaming, because I've watched a lot more anime this year than I've let on, and it's been really good. It's been very enjoyable, much better than some of the Western stuff I've watched. Adama, thank you very much again. He says, Jeff, I would like there to be a Stone Cold Stunner button. All right, it'll be The Rock taking the move. Until then, it's me, Austin. Sure, no problem. Here you go.
Who's that? Who's that Pokemon?
It's me, Austin! Oh, son of a bitch!
That never gets old. Jack White, thank you very much for your super chat again. He says, the new Psycho-Pass movie, Psycho-Pass Providence, premieres in North America on July 16th. Malevolent Spirits, Monogatari Season 2 airs on July 3rd. It's a patriotic weekend. I'll have some extra time. Again, Jack, just shoot me a regular message, and I will check out where those are streaming. If they're hitting theaters, my buddy Dan's going to go check them out. He is a big, big anime fan. TLJ Screwjob is back. Thank you very much, TLJ Screwjob. He says, to watch Doomcock Pop Culture Breakdown or WCBS tomorrow night. I'll watch WCBS, but have PCB on another tab to help Doomcock's algorithm. Well, TLJ Screwjob, I always tell you thank you for all you do for the channel. You're here for every show, every video, everything we do. And believe me, I see that. So thank you, TLJ Screwjob. If we ever meet in person, the first round's on me. And if you don't drink, well, I'll shake your hand and we'll shoot the shit for a while. Jack White also says, Bleach 1000-Year Blood War Season 2 airs on July 8th. Reign of the Seven Spellblades also airs on July 8th. Classroom for Heroes airs on July 9th. Now, Jack, is there a reason why all this anime debuts in the summer? Is that like a traditional thing? Because here in America, comic books would put out their big annuals because kids would be around and they have more time to read, so they put out their annual books with, reprints and new stories as well. And I've always wondered if that's the case. So again, let me know, please. Henry K says Super Smash Brothers the movie. Well, I want to see Super Smash Brothers the movie. I love Smash Brothers. I play it all the time. Samus is my favorite character. Folks, let me know who your favorite character is.
2035 is my prediction.
I will still be alive, right? The Earth won't have melted away from an asteroid collision or, some time travel gone wrong.
Oh, let's go watch that Mario Plumber fella we've been seeing for a decade.
I just love how not you guys, but I like how some people treat Mario as this new thing. I'm like, guys, Mario's been around since 1982. So let's remember that, hell, when I was a kid, Mario was getting his first cartoons and his first movies. And then for 30 years, they stopped because they sucked. But now he's back, and I'm happy because that was a good movie. Infinite Wander says, personally, I would argue that Paul's not a kaiju in the modern sense, but rather the last Jotun, the giants from the Norse folklore. Paul's more of a god related to things than a giant laser-breathing monster.
You can have fun with that. You can have a lot of fun with that.
I am. Dude, I said the name last week on the show. I'm just going to go for it. Infinite Wander, I'll send you an email, and we'll give you a thank you byline in the book, but I'm just going to go with that, all right? I've always loved tall tales and American stuff like that. Paul Bunyan, which I'm not going to say the name on the show anymore, is going to happen, folks. Give that 2024. That'll be a good release for WCBS. Headcase Laboratory, we have 2 more of these left. He says, thoughts on VR movie theater as a substitute? Personally, I think it's an interesting concept. What do you guys think?
Yeah, because of the Apple thing that they released or announced recently. I think it'll have its audience. I don't think it'll replace it in our lifetimes. Probably when we're on the way out is probably when the VR theater will be the standard.
I give it 10 years. In 10 years, I think it'll be a huge thing, but I don't know that we're quite yet there with the VR headsets. We're still in early territory, but that doesn't mean that we count them out. Mm-hmm. If you came into the video game scene in, say, 1979, you might look at it and say, it's okay. But if you came back in 1989, it's a completely different ballgame. And I think that's going to be the case for VR as well. We just have to get those headsets down where they're not so clunky, where they're not so heavy, where you can use them longer. And that's a number of technologies that all have to converge and improve over time. And as that happens, as all of them continue to follow that exponential trajectory, I think that VR movie theaters will be a very big deal. I also think that they'll be combined with artificial intelligence down the road, and you'll be actually able to order your entertainment in the same way that you order your pizza or hamburger. You'll be able to tell it what you want to have happen, and then it will play it out. And I'm sure some people out there will want the traditional style of saying, surprise me with the ending.
I've never even thought of that as a possibility, and I gotta say, I like the concept. The only thing I will be missing is the smell of the popcorn, because it may be overpriced, but when I walk into a theater and I smell that popcorn, I go, ooh, I gotta at least get a small popcorn. With the Flash, I did it. I always do that.
Jeff, as wealthy as you will be one day, perhaps there will be lovely ladies holding popcorn under your nose and someone waving a palm leaf to blow that popcorn right up into your aged but still strong nostrils.
I like the way you think, Pro. I appreciate that. I think I'm going to shoot for that as a life goal. Dr. Caulfield, we're going to press your button on the way out to close the show. TLJ Screwjob sent in another message. He just wanted to say, for Mario beating Frozen 2, I mean, with the Flash and Elemental doing bad, would Mario have gotten a similar boost like Frozen 2 due to bad films if released now instead of in April when it beat 1.45?
Okay, so this is a really fun question because we can see this in action with other movies. And so what are the 2 examples that we have? Well, The Little Mermaid did not gain anything out of this, even though it should, right? It should be the Frozen 2. So what instead is having the great time? Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse had a tremendous third weekend, all because people aren't going to see these other 2 films, so they're going to see Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse for a second time.
And that movie is a surprising hit. I didn't enjoy it myself, but I'm glad other people did.
Well, it's better than Elemental, where the bad guy is literally a leaky pipe.
Yeah, I haven't seen it, but I'm gonna go and agree with you there.
That's not hyperbole, by the way. Literally, the bad guy is just a leaky pipe. It's not a character. It's not personified. It's just a pipe that leaks. That's the challenge.
Our friend Luke Capinoto says, I saw The Flash tonight, entertaining and with no messaging. Maybe the pipe should have been an enemy in the Mario movie there, Pro. I'm sure it would have made more sense.
That's a great point. Well, that was the problem in the very first Mario Brothers movie Mario Brothers game that many people don't know existed even, which was actually on non-Nintendo systems, even like the Atari systems, where you had a single level and Mario and Luigi had to be in the sewers trying to fix the little creatures that were coming out of the pipes. So maybe a prequel one day.
I would watch that. Lou, I'm glad you enjoyed The Flash. I didn't think it had much messaging, but I just thought it was a 6 out of 10. If you guys want to hear a full review of that show or the movie, please check out this past week's podcast. Dion and I have a deep discussion. We don't give you spoilers in the beginning, and then we give you spoilers towards the end, and we definitely want you guys to check that out. Rod Thunderheart, thank you very much. He says, Rod Thunderheart's Thunderbomb button. Oh, is that a button you want? I could make that. I'll do my best Diedrich Bader, and we'll do Bow to Your Sensei and all that wonderful stuff. Rod Thunderheart, thank you for joining WCBS tonight. Thunderbomb. There you go.
Thunderbomb. Ho! Oh, different
dude,
thunder,
on
sorry.
Sundays. We should just dub that for Rod Thunderheart. There we go. Rod, if you ever need to run for office or anything like that, just know we'll dub your entire campaign. Jack White says, Jeff, I sent you another email with links to anime sites I use and new series recommendations. Tokyo Revengers. Well, Jack, let me take another picture of all the recommendations right here, and I will message Kendo after I get off the air, and I will let you know what I think when I watch some of these. I told you guys I watched Berserk. I thought it was awesome, and I'm looking for a lot more shows in that tone. So if you guys have recommendations of gory, violent, bloody anime, let me know. It's my jam. I'm not a violent guy in real life, but I like to watch those cartoons because they don't look real, and I don't want to watch real people get butchered or massacred. But for some reason in this kind of stuff, it makes me chuckle. So Dr. Coffinails wants the Steiner Fat button, please, and we're going to press that to close out the show. But Script, WDW Pro, this was an amazing show tonight, and I'm glad we get to do more stuff in the future. But Pro, where can we find you on the internet?
Well, you can find Little Old Pro and all the things I'm up to over on the same titled WDW Pro channel right here on YouTube. You can also find me writing articles over on thatparkplace.com, and I appear as a regular co-host of the Valiant Renegade online show Sunday nights. Don't forget as well that the Pro Show is Thursdays, 5 to 7 p.m. Eastern Time. You can find me and a panel of experts explaining entertainment and keeping you ahead of the culture curve.
Ooh, I like that. Script Doctor, where can we find you on the internet?
You can find me on Twitter at ScriptDoctorPhD, on Patreon at patreon.com/ScriptDoctor, where you can check out an awesome conversation I had with Jeff about web shooters and Spider-Man on the basic tier, which also comes with a 7-day free trial. So you can go check that out without having to financially commit. And if you dig the content over there, I'd appreciate your support. Otherwise, I also have a YouTube channel, youtube.com/ScriptDoctor, where if the things go well schedule-wise, this Thursday morning-ish towards noon, I'll probably be going live to discuss a little concept that's been circulating around regarding the superhero fatigue conundrum.
I'm excited to hear it, man. I'm going to be checking that out on the road myself. So, folks, you can catch me here tomorrow morning for Good Morning Pop Culture. I'll have a toy video out, and then I'm going to be talking about the Brie Larson stuff a little later in the day. So keep WCBS on your radar at all times. And then tomorrow night is WCBS episode 362, where the guys and I will talk about all sorts of stuff. And we'll be joined by Fatal J of the Dark Council. So if you like that, you know you're going to want to catch it live. So from all of us here at WCBS, thank you for watching. Be smart, be safe, be cool, but always be excellent to each other.
Threats are part of wrestling, you know? But you gotta look at the person that's making the threats. This fat son of a bitch is challenged all of us, has been world champions before, been in this business 15, 20 years, and this fat son of a bitch is gonna challenge us all out.
Calm down, okay? All right?
He's fat!